Right, this is going to be episode 1 of a new talk show in the League of Legends world. And this one, like, I actually am such a... On one hand, you know, I'd play it up like showman, you know, entertainer, you know, that I actually have a rule, which is I don't usually even tell the guest what the show is called, you know. So I'm actually going to tell Raz now what the name of the show is going to be. It's not that great a name, I can't lie, mate. But you know what? Sometimes you start with a name and over time you make it cool. Like the name Razleplasm, which is now become Raz, you know. You know, there's an evolution there. It can happen, right? So the name of the show is actually going to be, because the problem is, whenever you think of a show like this where we're going to be covering the LPL, we're going to be talking about the Chinese region, you want a name that like simultaneously someone else doesn't have, that hopefully fits the context of the show, vaguely memorable. My rule as well is like, you know, you should be able to put it in Google. It should probably come up, you know, it should be easy to search or whatever, you know. It's not like some name that's like going to be too vague, you know. And unlike other shows, I tend not to just like spam league lore related stuff. Like, you know, every other show in leagues, obviously, about like towers or diving shit or, fucking, you know, whatever they're called. Like, well, you know, everyone goes that angle. So I've called this show, it's not even that crazy name, I've just called it Middle Kingdom Minds. And for anyone who doesn't know the reference, because I've kept it like vague enough to where it's like, it's easy to remember, but it's actually not a bad name, because the concept is the Middle Kingdom is like another historical name, like a translation for what Chinese people themselves actually call China. This is obviously for the benefit of people who are from the West, etc. And the Minds angle obviously is, hopefully we're going to have people on the show who are experts on the region, they're going to give us insight into it, etc. So we're starting nice and vague there, but we'll go through. And then obviously, if we fuck up and the LPL cancels all this shit, then we can also say it turned out in the end the Middle Kingdom minds what we're doing on this show. So there's an amazing pun there, Raz. Okay? If I ever need to parachute out and it's over, I've also left myself a pun on the way out. So that's God. Listen, that's professionalism right there. You got to understand there's layers to this shit, my friend. Did you ship it the moment you found out that pun works? Like the moment you found, it's like, all right. I'm not gonna lie, that was part of where I reverse engineered, like, yeah, this is the name of the show now. Like, so, okay. Right, obviously, 2 of us on the show at the moment. So the concept is, Raz is going to be my co-host for this one. Not least because this is a show where I just pick who the co-host is, isn't it? I'm not making a show around people and saying to everyone, hey, everyone, look at this brilliant person. Let's make a show and listen to them. And then everyone in the comments all the time, I love the show, but could you replace that person? It's like, that's not... Guys, that's the whole reason I'm doing the show. No, but I love you, but I hate them. Could you replace them? It's like, oh, this is getting awkward. So anyway, don't know what shows I'm referring to. That Summon and Insight, I think it was called. Yeah, anyway, so we're going to talk about the LPL. But first of all, my premise for it, just to explain to people, is depending on the week. So some weeks we might just do it like a straight rundown. Like, here's some of the big games, here's the marquee things, here's the general things. But first of all, if there is like news or any community stuff, sometimes if we've got the right guest, it's the right show, we can talk about that a lot. So as people know with my shows, I don't tend to say super strict on the topic list, you know. I tend to see where things are going that are interesting. As Loco had to find out, unfortunately, on his show, he would make this topic list every week, Raz, and he was putting like 50 topics on this thing. But the problem he didn't realise was like a solid half of them weren't even relevant. And then, you know, as you were talking to the person, you'd quickly figure out 10 of the other ones wouldn't be interesting, you know. And so he would be sat there every time going like, why aren't we getting to these on the list? It's like, they're just not interested, mate. Like, I made an executive decision and I vetoed that in the moment, you know. It's like, like I just knew that wasn't a road to go down, you know. So along those lines, we might not talk about every team every week. So if your team sucks, I'm sorry, but you know, it might not get mentioned on this show, except on odd weeks.
I just love the fact that, you know, Loco, God bless his soul, not on the show, still getting flamed.
No, of course. It's
great.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
Well, that is another tradition, Raz, that you must know, is that I also like to use my other shows to flame the people that I work with on the other shows. It's like when you let off steam, you know, when you go home to your wife, like, oh, that guy at the fucking office fucking killed me. Except I just do it publicly as well. And so then the key thing is, though, if they don't watch my shows, well, then what are you upset about? You didn't hear anything. And if they do, well, you know, y'all know. Y'all know the way them views work. So okay.
The views come in.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, I'm like fucking Drake, mate. When I get views on deck, I just go 30 deep. Don't even know what that means. Sounded like it meant something, didn't it? Like,
it was getting close.
Yeah, I know. What's great is it was in the ballpark of being some sort of really sick reference, but at the end I sort of did reveal that I'm just obviously like a white dude from England, like, yeah, that Drake and his raps.
Literally, the moment you said views, I was like, I was already sold. I was like,
yeah, no, that was
journey.
already all right. Yeah, that was all right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So, along those lines, to start the episode, Raz, right? Unlike what I normally do with my other shows, because obviously in some of the other shows I do, you know, they overlap with what different talk shows cover, for example, the LCS, etc. Normally, even if I watch those shows, I try not to let them influence the show I do too much, because I think like, oh, you know, what if someone only watches this show? What if they don't watch anything else? You want to keep it like fairly self-contained. Yeah. But I am fully aware that thanks to the fact that Tencent or whoever's behind the LPL at the moment in terms of this initiative is going pretty ham, you'll have seen a lot more coverage of before week one, during week one of the LPL than you have ever seen in the Western world before. The amount of shows, preview shows. I mean, Raz was on half of them, put it out like he was all over the place. So I am aware that those have happened. So as a result, like, we're not just going to do a straight preview, you know. We'll try and find some different angles on some of these ones. And there's still a lot that can be discussed, not least because luckily, when I did watch those shows, obviously I was watching some of them like, oh, fuck, I'm supposed to be doing a show. Is this going to get all the good info? Luckily, most of those shows, to be fair, were based on the premise of like, this is for people who might have never watched LPL. Yeah. And so a lot of them did start at like literal bare bones aspects. You know, like, oh, who is, you know, it's be people like, who is this Top Sports that I hear about? Didn't they beat IG? It's like, yeah. All right, well, we can see what level you're coming in at. So, you know, the difference is, hopefully, Raz, we can actually go a bit deeper on this one. So, like, the LPL has obviously gotten underway. There were, I think it was 4 matches. I think we've had the first 4, so it was the first couple of days. So obviously, actually, while this is recording, there will be a couple of games that get missed. But whatever, you know, what we'll do with those teams is we won't tunnel too much on the matchup. We'll also talk about the team in general and where it's going. So let's start at the top, right? I actually thought one aspect I could ask you about, since you've been working with the LPL as a caster, I noticed that this year when they announced like some of the sponsors that are involved with the LPL, people in the West, you know, in the West right at the moment, it's like a big thing that you get a Reddit thread every time like LEC or LCS gets a sponsor and it'll be like, wow, car company sponsors LEC, and people are just losing their mind. Oh, wow, the big time's here. I can't believe league's got to this level. It's like, has the LPL always had these big associations with it? Has it had like legit companies always sponsoring it? When did this start?
God, I actually have no idea. In terms of like season 3, season 4, it felt like they were mostly just going for the team. Like there were Gigabyte, you know, the usual teams, like the usual sponsors that were just going straight for like team sponsors. But then it really felt like 2016, 2017, you were really getting a lot of sponsors just quietly, it felt. And then when I was with I felt really like it was coming through 2017. 2017, I was commentating LPL, and it just felt like there were just sponsors flying at you. Like there's the Doritos Crunch, the L'Oreal tunnel, like literally it just never stopped.
That is amazing, the L'Oreal tunnel.
Yeah, every time. And then like the producer would tell you like, all right, we're going to come in just because like the camera shot is going to get the players coming through the tunnel. And of course, that's where you hit the sponsors. Okay. And there's just a different mindset because for LCS, EU, North America, like the Riot idea is a lot of the times that they try and move away from, like not move away from the sponsorship, but like they're really focus on the players or like what the viewers want to see. They don't want to see like, you know, Doritos and stuff across the table. And then you come into the Chinese desk. I'm not even talking about the English desk, just like the Chinese casters in their desk, just lined up with sponsors. Like the caster comes up with like like literally just a list that they just go off for like 3 minutes about all the sponsors. That's
reading them all off.
Like every sponsor that's going for them. I was like, God damn it, that's how they're making bank. So the LPL just does not. I
can't believe L'Oreal sponsored it because, like, you know, it's one thing if it's like, again, people expect like vaguely esports related brands. Like, I get why a tech company, you know, might sponsor. Like L'Oreal, that's pretty crazy because that's like some mainstream penetration there. Like, I want to see some sort of a video associated with L'Oreal. Like, you know, Uzi I comes out dressed as Vayne. He runs along. He does like the little tumble. In his locks are just the slow mo. His hair's just flowing as he does it, you know, but shining the whole time. As he comes out of the tumble, you know, he just like condemns someone against the wall. Last hits 3 creeps, and they're like, "Wow, L'Oreal, what is it? Maybe what's that? What is the L'Oreal one? It's like is something like are you worth it or something? Wasn't it? It was something like that.
I feel like I should know. I'm the goddamn commentator. I don't even have a L'Oreal pun.
Like the tagline was something like "because you're worth it" or something, right? Which obviously Uzi I mean, if you know anything about his career, that's definitely how he feels whenever he's played in the game. You know, he's like, "Yeah, obviously I should get everything. I'm the fucking king. I'm worth it, right?" So. if anyone ever fit that sponsorship, it's got to be him. So I saw that, like, for this season, it said that the partners are Ben's, KFC, Alienware, Doritos, and then it even says and more. It's like, fucking hell, slow down. So yeah, as you say, like, yeah, Doritos. So for anyone who doesn't know, by the way, I thought this is an interesting detail a lot of Westerners don't tend to know. But when I went to China the first times, obviously, like, as far as I know, like, obviously I wasn't in Shanghai, but there was no burger places. There was no McDonald's, there was no Burger King. KFC was the thing. Everyone went ham over KFC because obviously in Asia, they fucking love chicken. Like, you go to Korea, they love the fried chicken. KFC was like the main spot when I was in China. It seemed like it was the main, like, Western takeaway that people were into, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Like chicken, like when you go into the meals, a lot of the time you get two options, which is like chicken and pork. So it's one or the other. A lot of the times it just comes down to what's more affordable. And so you just said, I'm just glad because, like, for me, I may not eat pork, but like with chicken, it is easily translatable. I have not met a single human being that doesn't like chicken. So that's just my thing.
Right. So one thing I thought, a piece of news that we could start the show with, because it's actually a very topical piece because it happened many times in the past in the LPL, which is, if anyone's watching LPL now, Raz, one of the first teams they're going to watch is RNG, obviously, because they're going to be like, right, not only is every Westerner like a fan of Uzi, you know, like, they obviously, he's so sick as a player and he's got such a big profile, but they know that RNG, you know, is supposed to be a team, like, obviously they need to kind of like regain status, prove they're the best domestically again, beat out IG, hopefully go to the next international tournament. Like, people kind of get the program for those guys. So people might be shocked if I tell you the piece of news, which is that Uzi is not going to be playing any games before the Lunar New Year begins. And it was said that that's due to his streaming contract. Now, if TSM announced tomorrow, oh yeah, Bjergsen won't be playing the first few weeks of the LCS, like, he's going to be streaming instead, people in the LCS will be like, what the fuck? Like, he's the main player. Like, how can that be? Like, you know, why would you jeopardize your chances to win the league? You know, there's all questions people would ask, Raz. So the first thing to say here is, this has happened a number of times, including last year, right? So why does Uzi take these breaks off? Like, why historically is it the case?
For him, a lot of the times I felt like every time it's been because of an injury. His back and his arm, a lot of the times, is something that he has to take care of. He's made constant comments about that. It's definitely the most frequent question that I get when RNG plays and they're playing like Able. But not a lot of people are too concerned because RNG usually wins regardless. Like, Able is just such a sick enough AD carry to be able to get it done. But yeah, whenever it comes down to it, it's because, like, they know that what really matters is playoff time, and that they're like, especially in the LPL, there's best of three, regular season's pretty damn long, and so they want to save their best player for playoffs. So that's what they end up doing.
Yes, yeah, it is also worth mentioning, as you say, that there's obviously more teams, therefore you play more games. So actually, like, sort of bleeding a couple away, especially at the beginning. Maybe not the end of the world if you're RNG and you've got a team that is expected to absolutely make the playoffs at least. And then your logic, obviously, if you're RNG, is even if we make the playoffs with like a lower seed, we're gonna win. You know, we're gonna play these teams anyway. So I guess there is a logic to it. There's also the other angle I always assumed, which was part of it, which is like, when you've played as long as Uzi has, I know if you look at his age, I think he's only like 21 or 20 now, you know, you think, oh, he's still quite young. But it's like, you have to consider like wear and tear on someone, you know. In his actual career, he's a very old player, you know, he's one of the most experienced. So if you look at those players, as you've seen with Doublelift, Suarez, a number of these names in the West, some of them have burnout, you know. Like, I think just to give the guy a little bit extra time off, because the thing to add in as well is, in China, the off-season is not the off-season, because not only do you come home after Worlds, which, as in the case of RNG, you hoped you were playing to the very end of, you know, but then you have the Demacia Cup to play in. Sometimes, depending on the time, you have the NEST tournament, although to be fair, a lot of the teams skip that nowadays, you know. Then you have a scenario where you come into the preseason, then the LPL starts pretty quickly. Like, if you notice, as I alluded to in the news, this actually has started before the Chinese New Year's even begun. Like, we're actually already underway with the LPL. So it's a fucking heavy schedule if you're an LPL player. Like, you can play a lot of games. That's actually one of the reasons why I always thought it made more sense that the LPL was one of the first regions to embrace subs, because you can actually give a guy playing time. In fact, you can even have a rotation. And in theory, if you were the rotation player, obvious example being like MLXG. MLXG was the backup jungler a lot of the time, but the amount of games he played, he could have been an LCS player for the amount he was playing. You get a lot of playing time.
100%. Like, in the mindset like of European and North American fans, they always think these players have to play 100% of the time. So when the moment they hear that a starter's coming in, they think drama, throw it up on Reddit. Like, literally, like, Doublelift has not played a game, or at least in terms of like the Chinese players, if someone has just frequently just started watching China, they're like, Uzi's not playing. Literally, IG just played a set, and the Shy hasn't like played yet. It's Duke coming in. So the fact that like they need to recognize, like, watching in China, it's fine. Like, in fact, a lot of the times there are no reasons given to the audience of why a player is not playing. That's not newsworthy. Like, the Shy not playing, it's because Invictus Gaming are that good, and they're going to give the Shy playing time. So, like, later on, and Duke is good enough to play. There are so many good players in China, and then in a lot of these teams, they just have, like, basically a Korean backup that they can utilize. It's no worries. So for me, like, just the fact that hearing Uzi's not playing, I was like, yeah, that's good. I'm honestly like, good for them. They'll win anyways, or at least they'll, like, in terms of their majority of their sets. And playoff is really just the focus for a lot of them.
Right, since you touched on it before, as you said, the backup AD carry for RNG, Abel, it's not like he's someone who was like a pure backup and now like, hey, let's see this guy. Like, luckily, this has happened in the past, and he has already played for RNG. And in fact, I always reference this. Earlier in the year, when they had the other Demacia Cup last year, they actually won it largely just playing with the Abel guy. Like, actually, well, there was no Uzi, and quite frankly, it didn't matter. Like, in fact, Abel himself had a lot of highlight clips. So that's the thing I wanted to ask was, right, if I heard as an outsider, oh, they're letting Uzi sit and they're going to use their sub AD carry, my actual initial assumption would be, since actually one of the things I found very impressive about RNG as a team at their peak was that they didn't only play through Uzi. I know people who watch Worlds are going to think that must have been the way they played, because, you know, it ties into the old narratives of like raising the poppy and stuff. What people might not realize is that was a team which absolutely, especially with when they domestically had the sub of Zitai as the top laner, they had the option to go anywhere on the map. And so as a result, I initially thought, oh, well, if this guy isn't that good, what they'll probably do is like soft play through the bot and then go to wherever else on the map makes sense where you can get an edge. But actually, they still play through, like, it's clear they think this guy is the talent. Like, I assume he's basically being groomed in the way that sometimes, like, NFL teams who know, like, their quarterback's really old, what you do, basically, is you figure out how many years left with, like, your franchise quarterback. And if you know it's only, like, 2 years, what you do is you use, like, a fairly high draft pick to pick a quarterback. So it's someone who would accept being a backup now, but you're sort of telling him, like, listen, but you're still pretty good, and I know, like, in 2 years, maybe you'll be, like, my guy. Like, I'm waiting for you to be the next dude at my franchise. So it looks as though that's kind of what RNG's doing, right? This isn't just like a shitty player. Like, what do you think of Abel as an actual AD carry in and of himself?
So I think, and here's where the real confusion starts coming in for Abel, that is, because I think that Abel, if he gets time to play, he would be a rival to, let's say, Jack11 iBoy. He is that good. It just comes down to where he wants to play if he gets playing time. In 2018, for me, I was like, I don't think he's not going to get playing time for however long like Uzi starts playing. So one thing that he's done, at least going into 2019, is that he actually moved into an LDL team for now, because like, he's basically wants to start like getting play time. So that's cool for him. So what RNG did is they just brought up somebody from the Royal Club developmental team called Wink. Wink, and he's gonna like essentially he's probably gonna be seeing the play time. So this is what's interesting. You already basically said it. The fact that they can play through literally anybody on that map. 2018, they're like, yeah, Zitai, we'll play through him, and he's going to play through mid, because like that whole mucked up meta. They were like, yeah, we're just going to play our Darius mid lane, and Zitai is going to be the one who actually gets a lot of the kills. Or more often, they do Xiaohu. They have MLXG, or now it's going to be Karsa, just plays through Xiaohu because he's just that good. And then like in playoff time, he ramps up when he has Uzi alongside with him. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm like, in the sense that like, maybe it's that LeBron factor. If he's off the court, the real question is this team good enough without LeBron? Zitai is not playing anymore, so now it's just Amazing J in the top lane that I do think is good enough to even be better than Let Me if he gets the chance. But that's going to be like down the road.
Let's go into that then, because that's obviously another thing about RNG is a lot of people are going to think, after the, like, okay, here's the thing. If I was like the general manager of RNG and I have the choice of what happens to these players, obviously after Worlds, the first thing I say is like, right, let's not change anything. Let's just run that back again, because the year was amazing. At the end, we just sort of made some basic strategical errors. That's it. You know, nothing wrong with the roster. if anything, we could maybe even grumble like, nah, you know, if Riot had let us take Zatai, we might have done better. You know, you could even have some angle where you could even find a way to tell everyone like it wasn't our fault or something, you know. But the problem is, this is not the same Royal Never Give Up. As you say, first of all, they've moved Abel and they're using Wink initially instead of Uzi. But more importantly, yeah, it's the sob element. So they've still got the jungle sob because they can bring MLXG back in for Karsa depending on the game. But actually, they not only lost Let Me as the starting top laner, but as you say, unfortunately, Zatai actually just straight up retired. So they lost all the top laners, and now they've got one top laner, and it's Amazing J. Now, the problem here, is I remember when this guy was actually a pretty highly touted LMS player, and then when he first came into the LPL, actually he was a pretty decent player. If everyone remembers, he was on EDG playing instead of Coral 1, and then that was the problem. Westerners are only going to know this guy from, I think it was... It was like basically IMA and then the EDG where they brought him in, like, and it wasn't very good at Worlds, you know. So what would you say about what we should expect of how they'll play with Amazing J? Because he's the only player, so they don't have the backup at the moment. So like, what type, like I know at that point in time he was billed as like a carry top laner, right? Should we expect that now?
I don't think so. And this is what's going to be really like shocking to people, is that they are just going to expect him to play carry top lanes. But like the most important thing about Amazing J was that he was such a great initiator and team fighter. And a lot of the times that you saw mostly the carries from Amazing J is literally because he's always been like, save for the EDG team, been on like really like sub 500 teams, like really shitty teams. So the fact that he was on BLG and Summer split last year, and he was essentially their shot caller, their team fighter. They didn't have any like carry threats. They didn't have carry threats mid because Mole, while he was getting better, he was like an average mid laner. Wasn't good enough if they wanted to go over 500. And then if we're talking about AD carries, Jinja wasn't good enough. So like that has been the environment that Amazing J has been in, from like Energy Pacemakers to IMA BLG. And this is his first real opportunity to be a main top laner for a great team. So like, this is probably his biggest chance for the audience to really get to know him, because from what I've seen, he is a leader. He is a great carry when he needs to be. But for the most part, his like tag or his nickname is like the Streaker, which is a weird tag, but you know, that's just how life is. Because he was known for like basically playing tanks, soaking a lot, Mundo and Singe, essentially trying to soak as much as possible. And when it gets down to it, he runs the hell away. So like, the biggest stat for him is literally damage tank while not dying. Like how much damage is he tanking per death? And so for him, like I expect him to play Ornn, like if the meta works for Maokai, Sion, and try and play through team fighting, what this team should and like was known for, and playing through Uzi and Xiaohu. Okay,
one thing I wanted to address then about RNG is, like I say, it might sound depressing if you're a big fan of them, but last year was the chance, because like not only were they in control of everything, like they were on top of the scene, but as I say, they actually even had more depth than you could see at Worlds, because they couldn't use all their subs, and bizarrely at Worlds they just made that weird meta read. I don't blame them. Like I always tell people when everyone laughs now, like, why didn't they play through the solo lanes? It's like, didn't you see that interview where they said they were like 40 scrims or something without losing? Like if the World's telling you like everything you're doing is perfect, you're gonna do it in the game, you know. It's like they only had one series to change within, and then it was just too late. So what is Royal Never Give Up going to be like in terms of, like, do you think there's a change with, because personnel wise, it would suggest, as you're alluding to here, it probably is going to be more set on like Uzi and Xiaohu. It's your team again. Like we're going to play through you. There is no Zatai factor where he's coming in to give it a different look, you know. Yeah, you can mix it up with the junglers, but what do you think on this angle? Like, what's the difference, do you think, between the teams?
See, that's the thing I'm worried about, because like, a lot of the audience didn't see that like 2018 RNG was like the most flexible RNG. They could do anything. There was a time in the split where they had double jungle of MLXG and Karsa playing Graves, Brum, funnel comp mid. They can do that because they were like so many players on that team that were so damn good. Let Me could even carry when he wanted to, and he was in a comfortable matchup, or like player matchup that is. And so you're like, wow, they could literally just change the mode and put like Xiaohu bot, Xiaohu mid. Now they can't do that. Now they're like, Amazing J, while he can play carries, will be more solidified towards tanks and team fighting. That's his call. He's like the best TP player. I've heard MLXG was taking a break as well, so Karsa is going to be in. So you're going to be seeing more Amazing J, Karsa, Shahu, like that's going to be their mainstay. So like the flexibility comes back. They're now, my opinion, likely going to be playing through Uzi way more. I would like for them to play through Shahu. So like I think the real call is like how much ownership is Shahu going to get this split? Because like spring and summer he did, but like in most important moments of like playoffs and worlds, like those times it was Uzi. And I felt like you can't have that happening with how the meta is really pulling away from AD carries. You need to give Shahu the ball. Like that's literally what it is.
Yes. Well, that's actually another aspect to address then. So anyone who remembers Season 7 Worlds, where RNG was in like 5th game against SK Telecom, they almost made the final. Everyone who remembers that tournament, if you think back, Shahu was looking amazing at that tournament. You know, It was one of the ones where he really like shone, and people realized like, oh, it's not like the past teams where it was just Uzi I kind of carrying people internationally. This guy's a very good player. As you're saying here, if people, and this is why I feel like the saddest thing about Worlds isn't that RNG didn't win. It's that the RNG that came to Worlds isn't the RNG that everyone was so hyped about. It's like, there's a good reason as to why people were saying this team was going to win Worlds and why they were like a hands down favourite for everyone. And again, why a Chinese team actually legit with an experts even was ranked ahead of the KT Roasters of the world. You know, people really thought this team was going to win. And one of the problems is the mid lane is that for some bizarre reason, it's not even just that they chose to go through Uzi I, it's that they went away from Xiaohu. Like sometimes they treated him, if you look at some of his picks, as though he was one of those players like Golden Glue or something, where if he's in the game, it's like, right, your job's kind of like hold mid lane, don't fuck up, don't die, and let everyone else carry. But like this is a player historically who I would give people the analogy for this team now, if you think about the personnel. Think about this team like the classic 2016 TSM, where they had Bjergsen and Doublelift in the same team. Like you had two MVP caliber players who, and in an ideal scenario, touching on what you were saying, you don't just want it to be like, right, well, you pick one of them and it goes through him. You want it to be like where the dream scenario for you is these dudes are pretty much competing against each other for the MVP. Like we're going to go through each of them depending on what game it is, what the comp is. Like we can go anywhere, and as a result, the opposing team can't kind of like just game plan for us easily and shut us down in a pick bang. Like, who is Xiaohu the player for real? If people didn't, if someone had only seen Worlds, what's different when he plays in the LPL?
For me, he is like, I would say in his peak in playoffs, when they like early playoffs, when, or at least when the meta starts pushing through mids, like at times there was like the Swain meta, Zoe, like he just picks it up and he plays it so damn well. And that, like he came in, we already talked, like, I know like Frost sung her, like his praises, Angel beats, then moves in like from GAMT to the squad. He was an assassin player. He owned a lot of pressure. He was literally always going in through solo lanes. It was just like 1v1s, pushes, roams. Like then he goes towards the bottom lane and he like just like always impacts it. So he was like a super impactful early game mid lane assassin. And he had to like change his identity to what is more of a consistent, flexible mid laner. And so that's what I feel like the team has done for him. And I think that that's not bad. If you want to play competitively, you do have to be flexible, but you have to also recognize when someone's hot. And I think one thing that people in the community always like, they get sold in the hype in terms of saying, oh, you know, he's not doing well. He's not that good. He's actually started playing worse than he has years ago. But this is not like basketball. It's not hockey. Like the man has literally gotten less resources, and he's playing a different role entirely. So if he's now playing a more supportive role, he has less flexibility and more direction in what he should be doing, which is playing through Uzi. If it doesn't work out, then obviously he looks bad by it, like in part by that. So I think that the major issue is like, I think Xiaohu is as good as Scout, but now they're on different teams in the sense that like EDG now plays through Scout truly. He's their main carry, so he's going to look good. So I think right now Xiaohu, he's not getting the respect a lot of times from the community. And I think Xiaohu on RNG should get a larger push. And I think he will. I think with the new focus coming into this split and the call being, well, you know, play through Uzi because like now we're going to be pulling away from carry through us top side, but also just like maybe we should be somewhat flexible and pull through Xiaohu. So I think we'll see both like Xiaohu carries and then Uzi carries.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that angle as well. That as bizarre as it sounds, it's actually the fact that Xiaohu's a well-rounded player that allowed him to be put in a position where he then didn't look as impactful. Because if you think about the way mid lane has worked the last couple of years, I know traditionally we want all the fucking hyper carry players who are going to just like take over the game and like win the lane, get all the solo kills. Like, unfortunately, that is like many years ago that's going to happen right with routine, you know. So as a result. Yeah. You see, it's actually, for me, this is the reason why I actually think the most underwhelming region in the world for mids is LCK at the moment, because the Korean way is kind of like, right, well, the good thing about the mid laner being in the middle of the map is if you can hold that area and you don't give it up and you don't die and you just play the mages and you helped everyone else, well, then that's how you set up the game. Like, they traditionally don't want the mid laner set up as the main carry of the game, you know. And I actually feel like, yeah, if you're in a team, especially the one last year, with as much like threats across the map and different looks you can give the opponent with all the subs, it's actually logical that Xiaohu's the person that you would say, right, yeah, you could play LeBlanc and take over this game, but why don't you just play whatever it might be? I mean, I don't know, fucking Galio probably, if you think about last year. Why not play that and then let the other players carry in the game, and in a sense that's being a good teammate? Because that was the other thing about Worlds. I couldn't handle the fact that we were living in a world where, like, you know, even fucking pole belters are getting put on LeBlanc, and I'm like, right, can we give Xiaohu something to play? And they're like, yes, Lysandra. And I'm like, no, not quite what I was thinking of, but, you know, Galio, you know, can we get a break here? Can we have something the man can carry on?
It's insane. Like, you even saw Vitality giving like Jizuke Echo. Like, and while it was like, it's like a counter pick, it gives him flexibility, movement, like the mobility to make his own plays. And then like, no, it's like RNG is like in their own bubble, obviously, because they were successful in their own scrims. And they were even pulling teams to pulling him into believing that the 80 carry was an 80 carry meta. Like every other, like Team Liquid, every team was like, all right, of course, you play through your bottom lane in this because like we're getting demolished by Uzi. And it made the most sense, RNG going up against G2 in semis, even if like it was truly an 80 carry meta, G2's never playing through their bottom lane. That would never work for them. That makes no sense for them. So like, even in the worst situations, they would be stubborn to say, no, we're playing to our solo laners. It just so happened the meta was like, all right, your solo laners are your most impactful ones. Perks is going to benefit from the LeBlanc difference. And even still, like RNG, I guess the spear that they were really planted with was the fact that they thought that 80 carry meta was true because they just kept on winning. So have it. I guess that's how it was.
Sure. And there's even an element as well people have to take into account, which is if you're the best team and you win all the time, you can even think to yourself, hey, we set the meta. Like, we're not copying what the other meta is. If it works and we do it, then either everyone has to copy us eventually, or you know what, we're the only team who can do it, which is also a pretty good spot to be. And sometimes you can be the hard counter to whatever the meta is. You know, it's logical, right? If we move along then, so the reason I want to do RNG first is because, like, if you notice, a lot of that I wanted to focus on there was the differences. Like, people are going to think it's the same team coming in. Like, for example, IG has the same roster. You know, they're going to think, right, it's business as usual. But actually, the interesting thing is the team that on paper might start as a favourite for some people, not only would they not be a favourite because IG won Worlds, but actually I think if you look at the roster, there's a lot more kind of question marks on RNG and where they're going to be at. So the question I have for you before we move to another team is, should we still think then of like RNG and IG as like in their own tier at the top, their own category, and then the rest of the teams are like, they have to like earn their way into that tier? Because as we're going to talk now, like the next team, for example, we're going to talk about will be Sunning. Like, can these teams which have, like, in theory, great rosters on paper, like, do you automatically give RNG the status of, like, they'll be in the final definitely, or, you know, they're the top of the conference? Like, do you think the changes are enough that they should be worried?
I think the changes are enough because even last year, RNG were in a tough spot in the regular season because JD was getting good enough. Like, JD just had like one split where they had like Coach Ohm and suddenly they were on fire. And almost got the second seed on East Conference. So like that alone was tough. And remember, like literally semifinals Invictus Gaming versus JD was like game 5 was really tough. It was like on the edge of just one play, meaning that was like JD could have been in the finals. So there's so like from the tops half of LPL, it feels like the top 4 could literally just interchange based off of what the meta is providing you. So I think for RNG, they should be worried about like how they're playing going into playoffs.
Yes. And for anyone who wants a storyline there as to why the LPL season is going to be sick, like what you might be thinking from that is like, oh, so the only team then I can be certain is going to be amazing is IG. And it's like, They've never won LPL, by the way. So there's your storyline right there. So it's going to be interesting no matter who it is. So let's go, as I said, to the Sonning team, because I'm not going in like order of big name teams here, but I thought this is a great contrast, because there's the RNG team that people think they know, but have got some tweaks. And then there's the Sonning team, which people who don't watch LPL don't know at all. But first of all, you're definitely going to know some of the names. And more importantly, the more you know about the LPL, it's like there's like a direct correlation on a graph with how hyped you are for this particular lineup. Because I mean, when we did another show, you described this team as a super team, because they kept the really good top laner they had, Shawal, they have Hacker still, the jungler, but then all the changes they made were changes that if you're a big LPL fan are like, yes, these are amazing changes, and in the context of each other. So they brought over the Flash Wolves duo of Maple and Sword Art, two players that along with Caster, everyone always said, like, oh, I wish we could see what these guys would do, not just in the LPL, but on a good LPL team, like, you know, a team that actually had a chance to win. So those guys come in, then you add in the Chinese player they brought in, is SMLZ, where again, if you followed domestically, he has been very highly regarded for a number of years now. This is a person where, I mean, this pretty much says it all. This is the guy that initially World Elite thought was going to be the replacement to Wei Zhao. Like, that's the sort of stakes we're going with here, you know, like, they were like, it's cool for you to retire now, Wei Zhao, we're going to try and use this guy. Like, this guy has been set up to be a great player. Just unfortunately, he hasn't had the world's attention that, like, Jackie Love, etc., have been able to have. And then, crucially, he's partnering with Sword Art. So, give me your initial thoughts on this team, because last season the Sonning team was like, they were like surprisingly decent, you know, like they had some good players, obviously a very different looking roster. Should we expect with this lineup, are they actually going to be a contender for literally the title? Is that too much to say?
100%. I think like if they get less than third place, that is a monumental failure for this team. Because not only did they get the Flash Wolves duo, in fact, the funny story I could say is the fact that like the Flash Wolves duo, when they went to China, they were basically making their rounds for each team as tryouts. Like went towards Snake, went towards Rogue Warriors, and then funny enough found themselves on Suning. And then when Suning was like asking like, well, trying to get 80 carries, well, they had just like scrimmed Rogue Warriors, and everybody already knew that SMLZ was like a sick carry. That funny enough brought over SMLZ. SMLZ, I've always regarded as the second best AD carry in the LPL, like for the past 2 years. And the entire audience, like the fans, World's fans, everything is just called like Jackie Lever iBoy second, because they've got the world coverage. Sure. And now that now that Score, who was previously regarded as like the best player that hasn't been to Worlds, literally got to Worlds, I think SMLZ has that title. He is literally the best player in the world that hasn't been to Worlds just yet. The fact that he's been so good, carried OMG to a 4th place spot in 2017, and then left the team through whatever drama that was, and then they are now as like literally the bottom feeders of the league. He is now on this team alongside Sword Art, who's consistently regarded as like the best support in the world, alongside Maple, who's a world-class mid laner, Assassin, like he's in the same shroud as like Xiao, who can play whatever he what the team needs. And then you already talked about the top 2 players, a Hacker and Xiao Ao. This is a super team throughout, and they have Coach Comet from A Freak of Freaks. The team is known as the best drafting team in Korea. Right. They literally just got the best across the board, or at least the ones that were available, slotted them in a team, and this team makes sense like synergistically on day one. So this team should just be able to get out of the gates running.
I mean, that's already... I actually didn't know the detail about the coach. That's already exciting enough as it is, because anyone who knows the Flash Wolves knows that they had some quite questionable drafting whenever they went to international tournaments. Like, I always wondered what were... Like, it's one of those ones where you just want to pause them, like that meme, and be like, you're probably wondering how I got to this position. As he's like in the last champion, like, what is this comp, mate? Like, no, this isn't even the meta. You've given them all the meta picks in exchange for stuff that they never would have banned. Like, what are you doing? Like,
and this is like a new situation for the Flash Wolves duo, where they actually have an AD carry. Like, sure, Betty was getting pretty good, like to a point where he is competitive amongst the best of AD carries, like an MSI, but they never were in a situation where they had an AD carry they can just rely on in team fights consistently. Like, get a new game and be like, oh, wait a minute, we can literally just like give him shields, get him resources, and he'll just go. This is a new situation for them where they can rely on both their late game, so their early game doesn't have to be perfect. Like Flash Wolves back in the day was like, great, you have a great early game. What are you going to do next? And a lot of the times it's like, we're going to team fight and then we're going to lose. It's like, it was mostly just because they didn't have reliability in terms of their team fight, their backline. So like overall, I think that this team should succeed. On top of that, as a minor thing, they have a deeper support staff too, because not only do they have Coach Comment, they have Izu who came from Vichy and who's fluent in Chinese. He's always been a more methodical player. So the fact that he seemed like retired as a player, moved as a coaching staff, and he's happy with it. This team has a smart squad and a talented team. They need to be able to like get top 3. And I think we already talked about RNG should be able to get the title if they're good enough. Like if they can roll well as a squad immediately.
The only thing is though, the one caveat I have for this team is like, this is an example of what sometimes happens in sports or esports, where you have a player like Swordart and he is so good at his role that like, first of all, you always feel like, oh, if he just had a better team, or in this particular case, like you say, if he just had like a star AD carry, what could he accomplish, you know? Because like, I'll give it to Betty, actually. He was solid. Like, compared to the other Flash Wolves AD carries over the years, he was a decent enough player. The NL guy, like, he was rightly kind of flamed. You know, he had his issues, especially when he went internationally, obviously. So the problem there is, though, to be fair, there is the other angle, which is, like, sometimes you look godlike when you're on the bad team, you know? And in fact, it's like, it's both in contrast to how bad that guy is, and then the fact that he's bad means, you know, you get a lot more room to do anything you want and you can pull off all this stuff. The question obviously is, like, yeah, in theory, you're going to be awesome when you get the good AD carry, but no one ever knows how that works out, you know? You've got to see it actually play out. Like, he's got to do it now, you know? Now there's no excuses. In fact, that would be my theme for Maple and Sword Out now, is that it's the opposite before. I myself would give them a million excuses when they're on the Flash Wolves. Because I was like, I'm amazed how good you guys are most international tournaments, even when your team's not that good. Like, famously on the Flash Wolves, for example, they almost never had a good top laner. Like, they pretty much always bled the top lane out because all the good top lanes were elsewhere in the LPL. So I actually think now, though, okay, I've been hyping you for all these years, Maple and Sword Art. Now you actually have to deliver, though, mate. Because this team, as you're alluding to there, especially in a world where there is uncertainty with some of the top teams, this could be the chance for an org Sunning that's never done anything to be an elite org.
I would say the same for SMLZ too, because I feel like 2019 is the year for SMLZ to have no excuses.
Yes.
Like his days on WE, like the whole thing of WE, can he like take over Waste Out? It didn't happen. Like, because he was like seen as difficult to work with, because he moved on to Masters 3 and he had a garbage support. Like I Love CD was his support, and he was like way better than that. So his laning phase seemed bad. And then he joins OMG, and 5 is like a good support. Like he's not bad, but he was far better than him. The laning phase was actually pretty like decent, but OMG could never go past like top 4. And they once again get to the world's like close to the gauntlet. And there was a drama between him and his coach that went on to Weibo, and like he was gone from the team. I was like, wow. Constantly, he's put in the situation where he is far better than his counterpart or support. And the same thing happened to Killua. And either ends in drama, or you can give him more excuses because like the team itself, which wasn't good.
Sure.
Now he's literally on a super team next by a support who is literally the same tier, if not better, like than you, with the experience that he has globally. For him, this is his year to perform. So I feel like this is a good example of like, can SMLZ be the best AD carry going up against like what I would love to see, Uzi and Ming. That would be a really cool matchup. But you already mentioned the whole Chinese New Year's, he won't be able to play. So
that's delayed a little bit. That's like for the sequel. You know, we've got to get this one underway. Okay, so one thing actually we will touch on is, since we're going to mix like analysis with, I don't usually do this for shows, but like a little bit of predictions, just so people have like a sense of it. When I was picking out the marquee matchups of the week, the obvious one for Sunning is the one at the end of the week when they actually do play RNG. Now, admittedly, yes, as we just said, that's not going to be the RNG that you think of from last year. There's going to be so normally you would call that like in the normal way you do sports narratives, like that's like the test game, you know, we're going to see how good they are. So in theory, Sunning should be favored to win this game without OZI.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I was like even go further than that. Just like across the board, that's the case. And if they're going to be using Wink, I think Wink is like far greener. Sure, he's gone through Royal, like the LDL squad, but this is going to be a new style. Once again, Shahu's going to be taking full of like the full pressure. And this is actually a Suning that's now been able to train. Because what we saw, people will be looking at Demacia Cup and saying, well, Suning is not as good as people are saying. But like they had just formed. They didn't actually, this is literally, that was literally their scrim. So now this is their opportunity to show it. I think they'll come out with a victory.
Okay. Right. If we move on then, again, we won't make it an order here. We're just going to go where it's interesting to talk about.
All right, I'm ready.
Like, this one's a bit depressing though, Raz, which is I do now want to talk about Jingdong Gaming that you alluded to before.
Okay.
And the reason why I say it's a bit depressing is because this was a team, like you say, last year, especially in the summer, obviously, looked like they were in position already to maybe go to Worlds. Like, for people who don't know, the bizarre thing about Worlds was EDG, to everyone who's a fan, it's like, well, of course they're supposed to get there somehow, you know? In fact, why aren't they winning the LPL? It's like, well, first of all, we've moved on from that. It's a few years ago. And secondly, you know, in the modern day, if you actually watched the LPL like splits, EDG was pretty ropey, you know? They only really got it together at the very end and then came through the gauntlet. The actual teams that everyone expected it was like a 50-50 split. You either thought it was going to be Rogue Warriors or you thought it was going to be Jingdong Gaming. Those are the two that people thought were going to be grabbing that third spot. So
yes.
On the one hand, that was a depressing year because it didn't work out. Obviously, the upside is this is a team that's made wholesale changes, and these are also some quite exciting roster move changes, right? So we touched a bit on this again on the other show, but let's just go over some of the basics. So first of all, what would you say for the AD carry position? Because they brought in 2 Korean AD carries. So one, everyone knows it's him. He's a world champion. He's the LCK champion. But the other guy, Bavoy, people aren't going to know at all in the West. So the question immediately is this, Raz, like, is the logic here that Imp is supposed to be the backup? Do you think they're supposed to split playing time? Is Bavoy like, have they got Imp as insurance in case he doesn't work out? Is Bavoy the backup? What would your guess be?
The way I see it, Imp should be starting, and you're right about the backup idea, because like Imp, I guess his character, or at least like his reputation, isn't as strong as it used to be. Because like LGD split's gone through, and obviously he hasn't been like, he's been performing here and there, but LGD's just been a bad team like ever since 2015. That is not a good rep to be coming back from. And then his play on WE, I think he didn't really get much of a chance on W because like Mystic is like 10 times better, so like, if once he finally started playing, you're going to give him all the play time. But he got like a few games and he was good, but obviously they had larger problems with like Condi and CA, and that didn't work out, so they were just losing the game anyways. So this was like a first real time for Imp to have real playing time since LGD. And with like teammates who have a system, like Coach Ohm is on that as well. So like that's actually just like, there's already something recognizable for him. So I think this is like, Imp should start. He's good enough. And I think Bavoy has some issues in terms of like his history. Because even though like coming in as a rookie, yes, he's had some history in terms of his LDL play. He started in Young Miracles when he was playing AD carry. And then when they get to the, specifically the promotion tournament, he is the one that fails a lot. He was actually the one that performed massively poorly. Like he constantly got caught when he was playing on Young Miracles. And they were like, all right, well, they didn't win. Even though they had like Knight, Ning, like all these incredible players, their AD carry is the one that didn't perform that day. And then it was Royal Club when they had, what was it? Insec in the jungle. And people were like, did they really have a chance to make it into the LPL? Hell yes, they did. They went to game 5. And they lost because of Void getting constantly like actually just mind-numbing plays. So Void, for how well he did during the regular season, both of those instances, has already garnered like an identity of a choker. Like that has been my issue. A choker, but also just not good enough to be what isn't a very stacked LPL AD carry roster. So like for me, Imp should play. Imp should go throughout this split, and I think he's good enough to do that. So I think that's my thing. Even though it's a downgrade from Loken, who I think Loken really turned up, I think it's not that much of a downgrade for them to really be losing positions.
Yeah, that's another reason why, even though as we go through some of the players that are on Jingdong now, they certainly got some very good players. And in fact, there's a couple of positions you could argue they had some potential upgrades at and some good recruitments. First of all, because that team could have made Worlds, I kind of wanted to see that team play again. Like, I wanted to see what they would have done this split, especially with how wide open it is now. Because for people who don't know, 2 of the players that they lost that were most notable is, yes, Loken, the AD carry. If you remember way back many years ago, obviously he was playing in Korea. Then he really made his name, though, in LPL, like, with his performance level, which is why he's gone over the top. And then the other player, obviously, was the jungler Clid, who is now on SK Telecom. And there's a reason why that team is called a super team as well. And that includes Clid, because this guy was a monster in the LPL. So I wanted to see that team go again. With that said, if you're gonna have to change someone instead of Clid, I'm not bad with the bringing in Flawless, right? He was a fucking monster when he was over on Rogue Warriors.
He was slick. I actually had him as my best jungler in Spring Split because like he was the carry with Rogue Warriors when they were like full late game, like didn't really have that much of an early game presence. Sure, like at the time, Duncan was playing mostly supportive picks like the Karma and stuff. Well,
That's what did have to do, yeah,
exactly. And so it was like, all right, well, suddenly it's going to be Flawless playing Lee Sin, and he had like literally a perfect Lee Sin win ratio until they went up against IG, and it was like, well, like good luck on that one.
Sure,
but Flawless is so sick, and I think that it is an upgrade. Even though Clid was like just as good as like he was a really good player, but I just thought Flawless was like a top 10, a #1 jungler at the time, alongside Ning. So JD being able to get that pickup is real good for them.
Plus, here's the other thing. Please, Flawless, learn from the lesson of Clid. You have to do well in this team. Otherwise, you know that offer's coming from the Korean team next year after the next Worlds. You're Korean, bro. They need those carry junglers. So I hope they do well enough that he actually stays in the team, because that's actually the worry I have now is Korea. It's like they're trying to figure out like, oh, LPL's getting strong. Maybe it's time we call back a few of those sick Korean players that we've sort of been letting them have for a while. Yeah, we need some. Actually, we need those ourselves. I need those back. Actually, I need those back. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Make the right choices this time. I know Blank. I like coming from Royal. That's fine too. But there are some really good Korean players. Maybe even Loken. You bring them back. So like, but please don't. Please keep them on TOP like this.
Exactly.
Like keep them. But yeah, there's a lot of great talent here that LCK might want. They might want back.
What do you think then along similar lines? Because another angle that's quite weird is the thinking of them bringing Levi in, obviously the famous Vietnamese player for Gigabyte Marines. Because presumably, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead, unfortunately, and assume this because of what they did with him in 100 Thieves. Presumably he's the backup player. But again, doesn't mean you don't get to play in the LPL. You might get to play. What do you actually think about how Levi will fare on a team like this?
That's a real good
question. He's kind of in the position I made of a more extreme version of the Sword Art scenario, right? Where again, everyone was looking at his teams when he's in Vietnam, like, oh, these teams suck, but wow, you're pretty good. So the problem is that is great, as we saw with Lyra and Envious. That's great until you actually get some decent teammates, and that's like, right, well, the excuses are gone now. It's just time to be a top player if you're a top player.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the NA players, when he was playing in the NA Challenger scene, like they were not really too high on him just because of the fact that he didn't perform as well as the hype was going. So like that's something he still has to be able to punch through. My worry now is that I don't know if he's going to see as much play, because like Coach Ohm, when he has like control of a team, he usually keeps the same roster. He usually makes a line between who's starter and who's like subbing. Like when he was joining WE, when he joined WE, they kept the same 5. When he left WE, there's literally a scramble between like every player, including Mystic for whatever reason. And then when he joined JD, like they stopped basically putting in the subs for jungle. Clid played full time, Loken played full time, and that was for like good reason. You get the synergy, and those are really good players. Why are you splitting up time? And if like Coach Holmes sees like, wait, Flawless literally put Rogue Warriors on the map alongside like obviously they had great players, but they had issues in early game, and he literally made them an early game focused team at the time. So I was like, yeah, there's no reason to start splitting time, especially when Levi doesn't have the name to back him, or at least it's kind of vanished with how he went to North America. That's my worry. I think he's good enough. I think he's literally, you can put him on a starting lineup for like any team. In fact, I would love for him to be on like Vici so they can get a kickstart. But at the moment, I personally don't think that he's going to see play time because of that.
How could you wish that on a poor guy from Vietnam to play the Vici game?
Oh, no.
That is the graveyard of good players, my friend.
See, I still feel bad for Swift and Coco, because I was like, no, they're going to revolution. They're going to push the team to greatness. And then it just didn't happen.
Nah, it's brutal. It's like Vici. It's like whoever you were before you walk through the door of Vici Gaming, it's like they just erase that past and you're just a new player at that point in time. You can be a world champion. It doesn't matter. Like you come through that team, you're a different player when you're Vici. In fact, that's why it's like it feels like Vici's the team you play for when you're deciding if you want to become a coach. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sad about that. I actually still defend Bengi to this day because he's not going to be the primary carry, the playmaker. Sure. But I thought he played well enough when he was on Vici and getting them early games. But now he's seeing his shit. I mean, he went through those doors, and now his reputation is scattered. Same with Izuhoon. Like at this point, I just like if you put in older players into Vici with a good reputation, suddenly you ain't making those streaming bucks because your reputation is in tatters.
Right. So the other player we obviously have to talk about in this particular team is the mid laner Yagao. Now, here's the thing I wanted to do though: is like The problem I have with this player is I don't feel like Westerners know what the context of him is within like the LPL and within mid lane, because this is the issue. So people might be aware if they know enough about League of Legends there. For example, like Scout has been one of the better players at mid lane. Obviously, Xiaohu when it's a certain time. Like Doinby isn't particularly an individually, like he's not a star carry player himself, but again, he's a very good player because of what he does for the team. That's why people always draw the comparison to High when he was in Cloud9. You know, it's that sort of a mid laner. But the reason why Yagao, I feel like, is in a weird spot is because everyone should be hyping him and be like, this is the new mid laner that's going to be sick. But the problem is, like, Knight just snuck under the wire and stole all that exact hype. So now it's like, so where does Yagao fit into this equation? Like, who is he now and who should he be if things go well this season?
Oh, man. Among the analysts, I know I was like me and Frost always had those discussions between like Knight and Yagao. Knight, if he had played Summer, would have been like Rookie of the Year. And I know they gave that to Dracula because like he was on the World Championship team. But honestly, it felt like because Knight wasn't playing, it was Yagao because he literally pushed an organization that would have been last place, or at least everyone really called that they were going to be last place because they like changed everybody up except for jungle and support, and made like put them into what was a top 4 team. So Yagao is so sick. Like, and I think what makes him so good is the fact that he can just play Yasuo, and he would probably just be good enough to just like play Yasuo, plays it like these assassins, play like Zoe and all that, and then just everyone would call him like the greatest mid laner, right? But he honestly always plays what the coach tells him to. He's like really humble, doesn't say that much when you put him on in a camera. Like he doesn't come out and say like inflammatory statements or anything like they like get the news going. He literally is like, I'm just going to work real hard and I'm going to show you that I'm the best. And he'll maybe like just play Galio and tanks and stuff like just to get what the team needs. But I think that you're right. If Knight wasn't playing, he would be the best. Like he would be second in line with Rookie. It would be Rookie and then it'd be Yagao. Unfortunately, Knight's insane and he has that attitude, that personality that like brings people to his lane. He can play Jace, Echo, and you just give him resources and he'll like make it work, and he'll just like duel you too. He'll go in side lanes a lot of times because he likes going into 1-3-1 and then like challenge whoever is facing him. Knight just has the swagger to play what he wants and the team just plays around him. So yeah, it's tough times for Yagao because he's going to be constantly compared to Knight.
Yeah, and that's obviously also the part that's harsh if you're an outsider is like, again, if Yagao's doing what the team wants and he's like, right, like as you say, you can definitely play fucking hard carry champs, he could be the best player. But if he plays for the team and he plays comp champions that don't let you shine, meanwhile, Knight's just over there. I mean, the analogy I would give for what you should expect from Knight is basically if you've been following the NBA this season, everyone is loving Luka Doncic. Like that's the player everyone's going hype for because he's not. The key thing is the reason why that's the analogy I give. It's like it's not just a player that's come in. It's like wow, for a rookie, he is good. It's like no, this guy's like already one of the best players. It's ridiculous. Like, he's just come into the league fresh, just wrecking everyone. So unfortunately, Yagao, it's more like when he's going to get the green light to show us some of that.
It's insane because, like, at least for Knight, immediately I would say that he is, like, if he plays the full year, if he doesn't have any of that contractual nonsense, I think Knight would be the second best player in the world next to Rookie. And they're all in just that one league, like literally what it is. And so the fact that Yagao is put in the same situations, as you said, doesn't get that same spotlight because of how he plays and his actual, literally his personality, then yeah, he'd probably be at best like seen as third in the region. But no one's going to put like him over Faker just because he's going to try and get the W for his team rather than trying to think that the W is because he's playing good to literally continuously play like the solo carry champions.
Should we expect this team to play through mid and bot? Is that the logical expectation?
Yeah, I would say so. Even like with how good Zoom is, I would say he even has like a similar personality. Like he's a little bit more of a shit talker. He can actually like be in front of a camera and like be able to say stuff like, you know, punch back. But in terms of play style, he's like, he'll play tanks. Like that's his thing too. So they'll probably play through bottom lane, play through Imp, or play through Yagao through their two primary carries. It's always difficult with that team just because they always have that big punch in their jungle as well. So Flawless could have his moments. So I think there are three main carries that are literally just going to be first Yagao, then Imp, and then it's going to be through Flawless if it comes down to that.
So anyway, we'll move to another team now, and again, I'll keep it fresh. Like I won't just go. We'll save some of the bigger ones as we go, and we'll like pepper them through. So a team that if we go back far enough in LPL history, was a very relevant team, Snake Esports. But this is a team where they're in a weird position because the last couple of years clearly weren't as kind to Snake Esports. They didn't have the same players. They gradually bled some players off, but they've gone for the some wholesale changes with this lineup. And the players they've kept are the players that you will know if you watch the LPL at all, which is obviously they've kept Flandre, one of my favourites, because people know I'm like mad biased towards carry top laners, and especially ones that have sort of been hard done by and haven't got the teammates that should probably support them, so people don't realise how good they are, you know. It's like Flandre just fits all those narratives for me. It's loving it. And then obviously, if you want to talk about junglers in the LPL, who can have amazing impact, they can do a lot on the game, but have their flaws, and it's the reason why Chinese League of Legends often was criticised for junglers. SOFM is going to be right up there. Like, even though he's Vietnamese, he's been playing in China quite a while now, and he clearly is one of those like knife-edge players who can throw you the whole game for you, fuck the whole game, but also do very well. So what should you expect from the new Snake? Because we're looking at a bunch of new players, not that well-known ones, and then we've got the established ones. It seems like they kept the right parts at least.
Yeah, they kept the right parts, and the question was like, what direction would they go? To your point, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to go towards like kind of more control and support to reel them in? That's what Guoguo provided. He would like play Orianna and or like whoever just to like essentially walk around with SOFMs. Like, go on a Raptor camp, I'll push for you, I'll follow you, I'll support you in your venture and your journey, right? That's what I'll do for you, and so like you'll be protected. Or the other direction. They literally went the other direction, by the way. Like, the fact that they brought in Andy. Now, they brought in two people. Well, I guess Asura, sure, but like, no, I'm not going to talk about too much about Asura because I think he's like a non-factor in what the strategy for this team is going to be. He's basically going to be doing what Crystal does and just like holding the bottom lane. Hopefully, he doesn't feed up against the top teams, and he's just going to be like a role player and catch up in team fights. But like, whoever's going to be charging forward are like Flandre is a good example, SOFM, and now Andy. Because he's coming in from a Snake developmental team, and like I've seen his games. He literally is the only guy in the world right now who's just like playing Zed competitively. He's known for like Yasuo. He's literally just playing these assassins out, and he's done an interview. Like, they asked him a question about like, who do you think you think LPL? Who do you want to face? And he said Faker or a rookie. He doesn't see. He literally doesn't care about the LPL mid laners going forward. He's like, I should be able to beat them. Like, I beat them in like solo queue kind of thing. And so he's very cocky. He will play assassins. He completely believes that like that he deserves to be in the LPL as like a mid laner. So I think for him, he's definitely going to be seeing more play time than Mala. I think that's going to be the case. And what all that does to Snake is that they just are a lot more crazy in team fights, a lot more hectic. They're going to be a lot more dive focused than anything.
Right. Obviously, as a team, like I said, once upon a time, they were in the position that I described, like Jin Dong and Rogue Warriors are in, where it's like, right, can they be the third team? Back then, it was like EDG, and I guess at the time, I'm trying to think who it was, like mainly second at the time. I think RNG had already started to come along. When we look at the team now, what are the expectations for Snake realistically? Like, are they a playoff team?
They were close. They were really close. They like lost the last series last year that pushed them away from playoffs. And I think the only reason why they were even close to playoff last year was because they were in the Western Conference and it was super easy to be in that. I think they're not a playoffs team. I think that the problem with this team was that they focused really hard on their meta. Or at least like whatever they think is super good. Last time around, it was like funneling everything into SOFM and see where that heads. But SOFM stylistically, even though he's a really good jungler, he is sink or swim a lot of times. He makes some weird decisions and he can cost his team the game, as you already mentioned. And that's just like, the problem with that is that if you can't keep to the plan, if you're not a disciplined team, you get bumped out by like 6 teams already. So that was my issue with Snake, is that a lot of times they always inch to being a good team, like a great team, because they have that kind of talent. And they're usually like very experienced talent, like from like a good example was Crystal. When they had Crystal, right now he's inactive. Like, I think he's still with the organization, but they're still like having discussions about contract. At least he had the experience to know how to play out the bottom lane when the pressure is not going through him. They don't have that right now. Like, I already talked up Andy, but like, remember, this is his first year. He's a rookie now. Asura, another rookie. Mala, if they play him from Korea, like, he's not played in the Premier League. So I think this is really testing. Like, they basically will not make playoffs in spring if these same styles and problems come through. And they're really just like aiming for summer split if they get another big acquisition, or if Andy really comes to his own as a mid laner.
Okay. Right. A team that, when we talk about top sports, this is going to be a squad which, if you are never watching the LPL, you're not going to have any clue as to why this team is actually very highly touted for this split.
Yeah.
And that's because, first of all, they've made some big changes. So the roster has changed. Like, if you looked at them in the past, this was the team that had 2 Korean players. You will know they had Goong and they had Marin at the time. So obviously, like, they're both players that have, first of all, very set playing styles, and they're kind of a bit one-dimensional, you know.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, first of all, this is the team that has brought in the aforementioned player we mentioned, Knight, who has all the hype. Like, as Raz said there, the hype isn't even just like, this guy's going to be a star in the LPL, he's going to be a good mid laner. The hype is like, he can challenge everyone for best mid laner in the world, best player in the world. Like, people really think like that's kind of the ceiling for him as a player. And then, as I said, they managed to acquire Loken from Jingdong.
Yeah.
And as a team, it's a totally different looking team than the one from last year, right?
Yes, 100%. Like, this last year, I thought TOP's issue is that they had too much player loyalty, right? The issue with like them was that they brought them in from the LSPL and LDL. Like, they were like, oh yeah, we're a great team. We have great direction, but individually, we're just like, challenge. We're not going to be matching up against some of the best, like the top 5 teams in the league. So I was like, going into the offseason, I was like, all right, they're probably going to like maybe bring some people in from their developmental team again. And to their credit, like they brought 369, but they changed everybody. To your point, like Knight, Loken, even Ben. I think picking up Ben was a steal, because Ben should still be playing on WE. The fact that WE had that catastrophe where they're playing like their whole 10-man roster when they already had like 5 really good players, they lost Ben because he just wanted to see playtime. So Ben and Loken, Ari is going to be a great bottom lane when they get clicking. And then you have XX and 369, because we already talked about Knight. XX for me was like the most improved player in 2018, because when he first came in, he was not as shiny. Like, he wasn't doing too hot against the junglers in the league, and he even got suspended because he wasn't taking a loss too seriously. Like, while they were getting smashed in the game, you can see his player camera, he was laughing around. The organization like basically said, oh, you actually need to be taking this seriously, because like, we're paying you money, like big money, we're putting you on a stage as like a new player. And it seemed like he wasn't like putting it with the utmost seriousness. And so he comes back, he starts smashing individually when he had like not that many good lanes. Now they bring him back when he literally has stacked lanes, bottom lane, mid lane, and then to the point of top lane. 369 is like a super good carry. So I think that 369 is someone that people won't necessarily expect, because they just brought him in from the developmental team. But he's the youngest player at the moment, because he just turned 17, and he like plays all the carries, split pushes, great solo laner. I think this team has talent across the board.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the interesting thing about the team, obviously, is like, as you alluded to there, unlike some of the other teams where even just looking at the personnel, you can get a sense for like, right, here's how they're probably going to play, here's how they should probably play, here's the player where, you know, it's on his back to carry, and then this other guy over here, maybe he just has to be a supportive element. This is a team that on paper, like, it's actually not that big a surprise that this is one of the squads that was able to beat IG in the Demacia Cup. Now, admittedly, IG came back and won. When they played IG in the first game of the LPL for this split, yeah, IG won, but it was pretty close. Actually, it was a fairly competitive game, I thought, when I saw some of it. So the question is here, should he expect it to be like a team that in theory can have carry threats everywhere? This is a team where it's harder to know how they'll play?
Yeah, I think so.
What did you see so far?
I think that at the moment they're at the baby stage of just realizing that they're all so good. Like you talked about, they were the first team to actually start scrimming coming in from off season, because they had their all 5 players and they were successful because of that. They gone through the honeymoon period of like, yeah, we're all good players. We can all play like carries and just like win. Now they kind of have to be challenged of playing a more focused style. I think naturally they'll start to play through Knight. It's going to be Knight and XX are going to be the primaries, and you're probably going to see 369 play a more tanky role, or like basically a more stable role, because at the moment what's actually happening is Ben and Loken are still playing active and playing like super aggressive bottom lane, but they don't have XX who's there. So they're just losing 2v2 or 3v2. So yeah, sure, they're playing like the best team, and that's the reason why they're being shown these mistakes. But like the good attributes is that the fact that they are great carries and they're gonna have to put it together. But also like when they're behind, so far what I've seen, they're probably the best team at playing from behind and trying to find their way back into a game. Because like even in the series that you mentioned when they got like smashed by IG, in game 2, they were losing, they lost their inhib, and even then 369 makes a call that he's going to go for a TP, like half map TP to round them up and pick up a team fight. But IG had like the IQ of like literally sitting in one of the only unwarded bushes to stage basically a fight back to, I forgot who they killed, but like that was one of the smartest moments of, if this team at TOP played anybody else, they would have come back into the game off that play. But they played Invictus Gaming, and IG, like Rookie, was smart enough to make the call to nip it in the butt. So I think, yeah, they lost, but they'll come back. And I honestly think they'll be like top 4 in the league. I think they'll be 4th place with how they're doing. Clement thinks they're going to be 3rd. So like it's between us who thinks is like, is it going to be Sunning? Is it going to be TOP?
Okay. Right, so a team, I mean, the interesting thing for anyone who's following the story so far, who's just only watched Worlds, etc., is already you're seeing that actually some of the orgs you don't think of at the top have got the lineups and the pieces to be taking the title. Like, what's crazy is and there's a universe in which it might be a Sunning Gaming champion of the LPL this year. Meanwhile, some of the bigger orgs that you expect to be good, some of them have fallen by the wayside. So one of them I want to talk about is the team that Ben came from. It's Team WE, because the bizarre thing about WE is, obviously they kept some of the pieces you've got to keep. Like the franchise players for them are Shie and Mystic. They obviously, Shie internationally has now accounted for himself very well, even though at times, like in China, I know people used to think that he got overhyped from that years and years ago, that IEM where he first came into WE, you know. But eventually he did kind of earn the status of being one of the better mid laners, even though, again, I will stress he was clearly not the best mid laner. But then this team, as you alluded to before, they always ran the game through Mystic, right? They understood, like, this is like the same way of in England is like, that's the way your bread is buttered, you know, like that's the way the game's going to be played. Mystic's going to be the guy we're going to load up on. So what have the problems been in WE? Why this gradual like collapse? And then it seems now, I've got to say, when I look at the current lineup, doesn't look like that's going to be turning around. Like, it doesn't look like they necessarily made the off-season moves to kick them back to the top. What do you think?
I think you're right about, like, I think a lot of people have those question marks because a lot of WE's problems happen behind closed doors. Like, there were a few drama that came through. Some of it leaked into the audience, like issue with Condi. I guess like once it started with the whole issue in the family that he had, so he actually had to stop playing for Spring Split. This was literally the split after he was seen as the MVP jungler, like best jungler in China and world in terms of just like his biggest performance, pushed them into semifinals, and then suddenly the next split, world semifinals, next split he's not playing anymore. So that was the biggest shift of why they turned into like one of the worst teams in the league, because they had to refine an identity. Who's our in-game leader? Who's their shot caller? Who's going to be the playmaker? And it turned into Xie. So like that happened. And then combined with the fact that they lost Coach Ohm, so he's not their coach anymore. And that turned into a bubble because suddenly their coaching staff isn't that good. They had to play through what it was, a 10-man roster, and they stopped playing Mystic. Like I think this team lost the plot the moment they didn't have Condi and Coach Ohm. And they could have refocused around CA and Mystic. That was a great opportunity to do that. But then they started throwing in a whole host of other players into the mix, like Gentle, and then later on Imp. And they just kept losing, even though at times they had good opportunities to win some of these games and pushed it to 3. So they were the unluckiest team in the sense that they almost had the right pieces, but then kept on losing. And then near the end of summer, they're like, all right, we're going to pick up a few wins here against some good teams. So at least the audience are like, okay, at least we have faith going into next year. So like, I think this team is like a bit of a tragedy in that sense. Like they could have been so much better than where they were, but after they lost to 2 pieces, it was just ridiculous. It's unfortunate.
Well, then let's segue perfectly into that then. So obviously, as you said, Condi, the guy who was pretty highly touted last year, the team he has gone to is LGD. And so if you want to talk about names from the past who used to be good, this is actually one that in theory, he's trying to inject some life back into the team, because they not only got in Condi as the jungler, they managed to get Kramer from the Afrika Freaks to come over. So if we look at this lineup, Raz, like, I notice it's one of the teams that doesn't have like a massive roster. You know, they've got like a more smaller size roster, which kind of tells you who they're going to play. If you bring in Kramer, right, the rep of Kramer when he's in the LMS and then when he was in Korea is like, he's like one of those guys where there's a bit of the Uzi eye in him. Like, he basically just tells people, like, just give me all the resources, like, give me a hyper carry, and then, yeah, I'm good to go. Like, that's the way we play. So the big question, I guess, initially is PYL, the support player who has been LGD the whole time and who was obviously the captain of the team and who back in the day took a lot of the blame actually for the world's collapse. Is he in 2019 up to the task of kind of partnering with Kramer and making a dangerous bot lane? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think if you drop ship this team into either Europe or North America, it might be a lot more successful. I think the fact that the competition in the bottom lane in the LPL is just that good, that even last split when they had Y4 and PYL, they weren't as successful as people had thought they would be. And I thought Y4 would be better than Kramer. I think that I'd actually currently think that Y4 is a better laner, more flexible, and better team fighter, even though Kramer is highly regarded and not a lot of people have seen Y4 play. So I'm a little bit pessimistic with the team. I think the team lost a lot, like in terms of just top down. Just so this duo, I think PYL has kind of lost it since Worlds, essentially.
So expectations for LGD, are there any? Are they a bottom feeder? What do you think?
I think they can be. I think they're going to be a bottom feeder. The only hope they have is the rookie. I mean, he was a rookie last year, but Yuki was a super good mid laner that they brought in. They had him fighting it out with Nanju to see who like gets that first seed spot. So Yuki was just the better mid laner. He played it out. He got a lot of solo kills, so he actually regarded a lot of attention from enemy junglers and stuff. And they have Condi now, to your point. So I think their 2v2 is something that they have to work through in mid lane. Issue I have is that I think that even when Condi came back for WE, he still had some issues in game. That was his mistake. So I think he still is. It's not so much rusty, but he's just making some poor decisions. And even if it's going to be based off that 2v2, the team around him got worse. Like, they don't have Jinu anymore. They have Lies, who it was the worst top laner in the league at the time. So I think that they've lost out in terms of just star power. If Condi can pick it up, then I think it works out for them. They can be a mid-tier team, but I still think they remain at the bot tier.
Fair enough. Right, let's do the IG talk then. I've saved it till now.
All right.
So, first of all, in terms of roster, as I alluded to in the RNG segment, IG didn't change anything. They really did say, like, right, we won World, so what's the point in changing anything? Clearly, there was no transfer of Rookie or the Shy or Duke back to Korea, so no problems there. They come in with the same lineup again. Admittedly, they've had some coaching staff changes. Like, one of their coaches went to, let me think.
I think it was Damwon.
Some Korean team, didn't he? Yeah, they lost one to there. So, IG... if everyone's done like process of elimination on how we figured out the other teams, actually, even though they have never won LPL, now looks like the best chance, right? This is now when, at least starting the season, they're the prohibitive favorite.
Invictus Gaming, yeah, I think Invictus Gaming are the favorites. In fact, a lot of the coaching issues that people are talking about, I actually think that they remain the same, because Mafa has been their coach actually for like years now. And sure, Coach Kim has like joined and he was their world's coach, so like he's still highly regarded in that respect. I think Coach Mafa, he's been with them. They're not changing anybody. So it's basically going to be the same system. It was an easy system too. They just had hella good players. They picked really good lanes from the counter picks. You're not going to be beating Rookie in lane. You're not going to be beating the Shy. Hell, you're not even going to beat Duke in lane. And Jackie Love and Baolan just commanded so much pressure in laning phase. So it's just like literally pre-15, especially with the new meta, where you're literally just getting gold off of the tower turret plating. They're going to be snowballing so much more frequently than they did last year.
See, the funny thing is, when you reference that, the fact that the coach is the former KT Roaster support player Mafa, who people might remember from the classic KT Bullets, where he was his lane partner was obviously the jungler Score. Like, that was when Score was an AD carry. Now, the interesting thing is, when they used to play in Korea, they were actually famously one of those bot lanes that's like, right, well, we're not going to carry the game. Like, our job is sort of like, you know, play safe, don't take many risks, you know, we'll win the game off team decisions or macro decisions or other players in the game. So you would actually, if you thought like the coaching philosophy would fit the playing philosophy, this team's very different, because one thing we touched on the Listen Loco show is that you would think when everyone sets this team up, like it's a classic IG, the best players are the solo laners, they play through the solo laners. Yeah, but normally that comes with the caveat. If you think of like Rocks Tigers, Kingzone Dragon X, of like, right, bot lane are bitches. Like your job is just don't die, just play things that survive and can do decently in the lane, get to the team fight. If the game isn't over there, you're going to have your chance later because you're an AD carry and, you know, we add items, that's where an AD carry becomes viable. They don't do that in IG though. Like, it's like no one informed Jackie Love and like that actually he's in a bot lane that's supposed to be like that. Like, he thinks that he thinks his job in the LPL is compete with Uzi. He really does, doesn't he?
Yep. The guy is literally just like, all right, I don't give a... He legitimately just disrespects every AD carry out there. He thinks he's that good. Like, he even says that he has that Draven mentality where he just walks forward.
Because obviously that's what makes this another team that's very interesting, is that you can go all over the map with this team. It's up to you where you want the carry threat to be, how you want to play the game. They don't oftentimes, because, I mean, to be fair, it works. Obviously, they've got amazing solo laners, but potentially, if we had to, we could see more versatility from IG if the meta changes.
Yeah, I think so. Even Jackie Love showcased, like, when last year was the most ridiculous bottom lane meta, he was like, all right, I'll just play Yasuo. Like, I'll play, like, he'd play mages as well. So I think that this team could play through literally any lane. The Shy has literally showcased that he can both play tanks to team fight, and he can just play bruisers and carries. So this is literally the most flexible team right now in League. They can do whatever they want. Ning can play both carries, like he can play Lee Sin, Kindred. You can play tanks like Sejuani. And like they play that tightrope style because they think this is the best way to play the game. Like, they think that as like every lane can push and chip down turret, and it's up to Ning to just track down the enemy jungler. The enemy jungler is seen 100% of the time where they can track him through where his pathing is. Then, like, what does he do? Like, what is the threat? Is the threat bottom lane dive? Not going to happen. Like, a bottom lane gank will come if the enemy jungler is being tied up. So, like, they think this is the best way to play, and that's why they've had like the most historic like spring and summer win record of 18-1, 18-1. This team is insane. I think like I actually called that they were going to win spring and summer champions. Didn't happen because first of all, the injury in spring, but then of course RNG was just that good anyways in summer as well. So like this league is actually just insane. I have to hold myself back from cussing because it's like that's how excited I am.
What about this angle then? Is when in this team, because all the other players are so highly touted, and like actually, as you alluded to earlier, Jackie Love actually probably overhyped by people who haven't watched LPL. Like within LPL, he's a good player, but he's certainly not like the one that's blown everyone's mind.
Yeah,
right. The players that always got overlooked, obviously, with the support and the jungler, support and the jungler, Baolan and Ning. Yeah. Now, if anyone saw the final of Worlds, they're already sold on Ning. Like that made him look like a fucking genius. Like I don't know what it's like. Fnatic and Broxah were like, you know what? You've had a hard tournament. We're going to make you look like the best jungler to ever play League of Legends. So just perfectly track me the whole time around the map. But Baolan's someone where, again, him and Ning were taking a lot of flack early in that Worlds. Like, people were like, these guys are just inting. They're playing like shit. Like, do they not... Like, obviously, unfortunately, it played into all the worst stereotypes that, like, Korean elitists have of, like, oh, well, they don't understand the support and jungle positioning in China, you know? Like, yeah, sure, they've got good mechanical players like that. The old narrative, you know? Who are these guys when they're in the LPL?
In the LPL, like, Baolan was known as like a great roamer. He essentially like left the lane. Remember, Invictus Gaming like had a revolving door bottom lane. They started like kitties and they just kept moving from support to support. Like they even had Ben at some point, but like that was like it was a little bit better. But their identity was like, we'll play through top side and we don't give a damn about bottom lane. That's not our style. But then Baolan forced them to like really recognize bottom lane was important, because then he would literally roam from bottom lane to mid, and he would change the game for Invictus Gaming. Like he was the first cog for changing and giving IG a focus of playing through bot lane at times, because with him, he was like, oh, actually, if we have our support helping us in our plays, then we can just win out, play through dragons a little bit more. Like Rookie actually has a much better laning phase if a support's coming to help him. And like, so Baolan was like sick. I think that Baolan was like turned into our best roaming support. People will talk about Road, but like Road was just always throwing Hail Marys, like a risk always going top saying. Like it didn't make sense sometimes. But like for Baolan, he would always do it at the right times. So like that was the thing with Baolan. And then for Ning, even though I said Flawless and Spring Split was like my number 1 jungler, I had Ning as number 2. And then like last year I had Ning as number 1 in summer. And then in the summer split for 2018, I had Ning again. I thought that Ning was literally had the hardest job of differentiating himself amongst other junglers, because if you literally have just winning lanes every time, people are like, okay, well, this like it's so easy for him. But for him, he played the hardest role of literally always going into the enemy face, enemy jungle, being the one who is the first risk taker. I think mechanically he always played excellently, and then he made the right decisions most of the time. So like in terms of just consistency, he hit all of those metrics. So I thought both Ning and Baolan were great supports for what was like a 3 carry unit.
Right. We can obviously just, we'll skip over, we'll very briefly address. I only want to address Rogue Warriors from the context of, like I alluded to, unfortunately, you missed, if you didn't see Rogue Warriors last year and you don't like to watch VODs, it's over. Like the show's over, guys. Like you missed the show. It was really, it was popping off for a season, you know. They had a whole bunch of players that sadly have just like spread out among the LPL. So obviously they had SMLZ, who's now on Sunning. They had Doinby, was their obviously enigmatic leader. He's now over on Fun Plus Phoenix. They had Flawless, who's now on Jingdong Gaming. And instead, the entire team is new. It's all Chinese players. It's a lot of Chinese players that people won't have heard of. And it looks actually, when they've made the team, as though they've gone that route of like, pick up like sub players for every position. And we're going to figure out this lineup, this thing as we go. So yeah, has Rogue Warriors basically become like a team with a bottom team now? And we're just going to see who's in there. Are any of these players, is there some hope with some of these? There
is some hope, but I'll start with the fact that I expect them to be last place, right? For me, that's the starting point where they did lose every star. Kilo is still on the team, but like he was a rookie last year. So now he's basically taking a leadership on year 2. That's actually something you shouldn't be asking of a lot of your players, unless if they actually showed you something in the first split. And I think the first time he rolled in, he actually had a pretty poor time. So it's going to be tough for him. At least they have stake. But you're right, across the board, like new players. Jiang Chao in top lane, he's not that good. He's a good role player, but he's just going to be playing tanks every time because laning phase, he's going to be in the negative. And Shuju, their jungler, is, I think, the worst player on that team, and he has some really poor decisions. But all of that, and this is what it comes down to, top lane's poor, jungle's poor. Mid lane can be good because I think Kong Ming, who hasn't seen play in the LPL yet, can actually showcase like good play. He's like a mid-tier mid laner. But they don't have a star unless if it's Zhang Wuji, their AD carry. Like once again, the LPL has literally found another like star 80 carry to throw into the mix. I think Zhang Wuji is like such a sick player. For people who don't know him, he's basically a Vayne streamer. He's a streamer. He's like, think of Gosu, a streamer who plays Vayne a lot. That's who he's known for. And actually had like a really good win rate on Vayne in the LDL. So he's just willing to go with him. He already received his first Vayne ban in the last series. So like at least that's their hope, is that they can just play through Zhang Wuji.
I'm amazed there's actually anyone in the world who's like, I choose to play Vayne now. It's like, well, Kai'Sa is just too easy, you know. Like I want like a more difficult version of Kai'Sa to play. Like, fair enough. Then you are at least like in a way you're stating your intentions when you do that. You know, you are sort of just saying like, listen, fuck around with this boy. I'm coming hard.
Dude, he's already
for a home run on every play.
He's already received his first challenge because like you can't play Vayne in this team. They literally just lose too quickly. So he's like, all right, goddamn it. He played Kalista in game 2 and he basically owned the lane and then made it easier for them to actually be in a good position for team fights. Like now that's the situation this team is. From like top 4 team to now a team that's just going to be struggling against mid-tier cards because they need to give Zhang Wuji an early game AD carry at least.
Right, a team that I've just touched on, a player who's joined the team, so I'm interested to ask your opinion on, is Fun Plus Phoenix. Because, right, once again, if you're a Westerner, first thing you've got to do in the LPL, get past some of the names. I know some of the like you hear names like Billy. Yeah. Like, that can't be a real name. That's like something like a little kid says when you when they play with a toy or something, you know, like it's just an unusual name. Same with Fun Plus Phoenix. It sounds like some sort of like Mad Libs or something, you know, like what a strange name. But actually, they weren't a terrible team in some of the past years. They had times where they showed a little bit of promise. Yeah, they never came through. And the key thing for me is they've obviously made a bunch of changes themselves. And the big change they've made, and this is why I was excited to ask you about the team, is they've gotten Doinby. And for anyone who doesn't know, like I actually plan at some point in time to do one of those narrative wake episodes where it's like, you know, it's not like it's set on something topical at the moment. It's like you look historically at a player or something. Because I feel like Doinby is the player who Westerners just, you can't grasp who he is as a player unless you followed his LPL journey. Because he really is like high in as much as, wait a second, have you frozen? Oh, I think you have. I'll just wait there a second till you come back.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you froze, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
It's all right. Right. Did you... Right, basically, yeah, it's still going. I'll edit that out. Basically, if someone's never seen Doinby play, the reason why high is a good analogy is because, first of all, it is famous from all the interviews with him and his teammates that this guy is like an amazing shot caller. He's a guy who just understands where to go on the map. Now, that's because he's someone who can communicate with the Chinese players. And then on top of that, he even playing style has a bit of high in him where like, this is the guy where the picks you see this guy bring out are the unusual ones. They're the ones that other people don't play. They are the supportive mid laners. But as you've seen, if you give him star players, he can make a team very dangerous. If you give him players that aren't as well known, he makes them an incompetent team. Has he got his work cut out for him with this lineup? Like, can he take some of these players who people might not know by name value? Can this actually be a competent team? Are you one of those people who has faith in Doinby in that sense?
I have faith. It just depends, but like, what the context is it? Like, if we're talking about like top 4 in the LPL, I don't think so, right? I don't think that's going to be the case because the issue with this team like isn't talent per se. I think it's brains. I think the team sometimes goes too quickly, which I guess works for Doinby because like in the context of like what is their team play style, the team before Doinby was already like brawlers. Like they just looked for fights a lot of times because LWX was an insane like AD carry who's known as the shotgun because he is talented, but a lot of times he just goes way too close to danger. Like he literally just like at times would melee the opponent. You're like, please, like what are you doing, man? He's like basically playing with his finger hovered over the F key. Like, can I flash at the right times? It's insane. So he's basically a player who either like comes out 100% goes like MVP if they win, or he would cost his team the game. And then you have Gimgoon, like since Xenix has been like pushed as like, oh, this guy's going to be the next best thing.
Yes. And he was the only one that didn't make it out of the rest of them. Every other player in that team, Arrow, you think of Coco, Swift, they all made it eventually. He's the guy he's kind of just been in a bit of obscurity in China, right?
Yeah, like Gimgoon's issue is that like I actually think he's always been like the best player in the teams that he's been on. He's been on game talents, which people, of course, Western audience doesn't know who the hell they are. Like Gimgoon put them on the map because he was their best player and once again pushed in team fights and was a great carry. He just joined a lot of these teams and made a name for themselves. And now he's on FPX. And before when he's on FPX, the one thing, once again, is that he didn't have communication with the map. Like he was that, like basically the lone Korean player that was playing well, but then wasn't set up to succeed. This is probably the first time he's set up to succeed. We've already seen a series that he was able to play against Rogue Warriors, and like he won lane because he was given a good matchup. He was given good pressure. Doinby was like also essentially like working to play through top lane as well. Gimgoon is probably like is finally in a position where he's set up to succeed for like with his team to win through lane and actually playing through team fights, which he's been pushed as like a great team fighter. So like they had talent, they just didn't have the brain. That's why I don't think they're top 4. Is that the addition of Doinby oftentimes means that you guys are fighting before you even have the setup, you even have the wards placed down around Dragon or Baron. You just go because you're confident that you'll win team fights anyways. And like that's their major issue against like the slower, more disciplined teams.
Right. Okay. Right. What about another team that has another famous Korean mid laner? It's got to be Billy Gaming. So this is also a team that last year obviously was making strides. Now they've got in top laners are Korean as well. They've got an ADD who used to be an MVP, who admittedly, like I won't judge him too harsh off. That MVP was obviously a terrible team, but you can never know. if you're like caught in the mess of that, if you're part of it. The key pickup, obviously, though, and I actually think this is a crazy move for this team. Like, this just shows how bizarre the league scene can be, because if people were watching the LCK last year, it is no exaggeration that Kuro was being named like MVP candidate. Like, this guy was having an amazing season. Bearing in mind, he'd been somewhat left behind from all the other Ox players who were all like, hey, see you, Smith. I'm off to play SK Telecom. Hey, I'm going to go join KT Rolster. Like, you know, they were all going elsewhere. Like, yeah, I can't wait to win LPL. And then they were all like, oh, where are you going? And he's like, I guess I'll just have to go to Freak of Freaks. But then all of a sudden, Freak of Freaks is one of the better teams in the league. He was playing very well as a player. Somehow has ended up on this team, on Billy Billy Gaming, right? This seems like, I kind of feel for Kuro, like, when does this man get, like Roddy Dangerfield, can this guy get some respect? Like, what the fuck? Like, no one wants this guy? So either they've done a big deal for him, or this is all that was left. So is this going to be the graveyard for Kuro? Is this, what do you think of this team?
I think a lot of people do think that. It depends on what, once again, like, because Kuro was MVP candidate, he deserves to be on an MVP caliber team. I think that's just the case. Even though he didn't have a Worlds, I don't want people to just think of like, oh, that one tournament that he must be shit, right? No, he was literally the most consistent, one of the best players, mid laners. Played better than Faker in like for a full year, honestly, in Korea, and deserved to be on some of these Korean teams. They're honestly just not gonna have some good times without him.
Yes.
I think he'll be, essentially he's a franchise player now for BLG. That's just going to be the case. They're going to be changing up a few cogs. I think their top lane still needs some help. That's what's going to be stopping them from being a top 5 team in the LPL, is that their top lane is a downgrade. Their bottom lane is not good enough right now because Jin Zhao and now Kain, like, so rookie support, never seen him in my life. And then AD carry that will never challenge for top 5, let alone like he's going to basically be trying to push for top 10. Is what Jin Zhao is. But here's the thing, and this is why I think they're going to be a mid-tier team, is like they have a playmaker. And it might not be Kuro, but it's Meteor, their jungler. He's a rookie. He came in from Triumphant Song Gaming, or like Victory Song, I suppose, from the LDL. And he's like, he plays carries like Nidalee, Kindred. Really smart too. I think that he's someone that people will start respecting. He already got his MVP today, actually, when he played up against LGD. So he will put them on the map. Kuro will play alongside Meteor, and they will win games because of that duo. But once again, that's not what we want to see out of Kuro. We want him to essentially be in the top of the league because of how he played consistently. So I'm a little disappointed, personally, that they didn't give him the tools to push him into a top 5. But at least Kuro is going to be, once again, like the mainstay player that people are going to be pushing in a franchise.
So I noticed that the only game that it looks like they play was the one they already played. So they played LGD already.
Yeah.
Right. What type of a team would be an appropriate test for this particular Billy Billy lineup? Like, who should we look at, either on the calendar or just in terms of the table? And like, this is a team that can give you a gauge as to like whether it's going to be a team that's like a playoff team that's doing something legit, whether they're going to be mid-tier. Who would be like a reasonable reference point to expect them to either have to beat or to play well against? What sort of team are we talking about?
I would say JD, or JD and EDG, because for me, JD and EGG are like on the fringe of top 5. Like for me, they're like, EG has basically been pushed around by this time around by the likes of TOP, by Suning. And then if they're hitting on top 5, I want to see what BLG is placing, because I think that if they can take down ADG or even put them in a best, like in a straight 3-game series and make it difficult for them, then that immediately pushes Billy Billy into the not the playoff picture in terms of like, I think that they can go farther in playoffs. Like they can go up against like RNG and IG in the semifinals. Like that's a big push where currently I'm a little skeptical on, because I think the laning talent isn't there yet, and they're pushed into a more team fight role. So I want to see that matchup. If I'm just going through what their first week is looking like, BLG, I guess I'll have
looks like they have a pretty easy schedule to start out with.
Yeah, you're right. Literally playing against the easiest teams. Kind of sad, isn't it? Yeah, well, we won't see this team playing.
To be fair, then that makes our narrative better though, because that way, if they get some wins off the easy teams, then we can wait for kind of like the first, test game, the statement game, as they always say in American sports. Like when you play one of these teams that you're saying at EDG, we'll see if you're in that tier.
Funny thing is, literally, I said JDG first. week 4, just outside of the Chinese New Year's, they go up against JDG. So I would say mark week 4, Saturday on your map, that like BALG versus JDG, you're going to get a good picture of them. They're going to have a good record because they're going to be beating up a lot of these teams coming up to that point. They're going to beat V5, maybe in the 3-game series. They're definitely going to beat OMG. And then when they go up against JD, you really get to see if this team can just play through team fights and get past it.
Okay, so another team, you alluded to them there, that we've got to cover, one of the bigger names, but I kept it towards the end, was Edward Gaming. Now, as I alluded to before, the context of that team last year was somewhat underwhelming, actually, considering a bunch of their players a couple of years ago won the LPL, amazingly, and made it to Worlds off that. Actually, they looked the whole year like they weren't relevant. Like they were never going to be a team that could have made the final of last year's LPL. Yet bizarrely, not only went to Worlds, but you know what? I don't know why people were memeing on them at Worlds. Sure, they looked at times very messy, and they clearly couldn't play beyond a certain like it's like once they were like I'd call them like the Cinderella team, because once the clock stuck at a certain time, it was over for them. Like like all the great shit they did before, because people forget. Like I know everyone memes on NA, they did still get out of a group with the #1 NA seed, and actually Team Liquid had looked like the best NA team coming in. Then you look at Worlds in the quarters. They actually gave a very good account of themselves against Fnatic. They were in pretty much all those games. At times, even had leads on Fnatic. Like that was actually looking like potential was there to do something. So, bearing in mind they haven't really made many changes. Like all they've done is add to the team. Like they've added in the aforementioned Mole that you mentioned before. They've added in
the coaching stuff too.
Yeah, it was just the coach. Yeah. So they're in a position now where they are running it back again, and they've got a pretty similar team. Right. First of all, does Mole ever see playing time? I mean, as you alluded to, Scout has basically himself been an MVP candidate in the LPL. Yeah. Do you think they play him? Is there a reason to play him?
The only reason they made for bringing Mole into the team was that there would be health concerns with Scout. So like if that's basically the reason, as like an insurance thing. If Scout has like health issues, which apparently like going through the off season, that was placed that he might have to be unhealthy. And I think I forget which one, for what reason it would be. Like that's basically it, because Scout's their mainstay player. Otherwise, Mole is just going to be sitting on the bench. They're basically rolling with the same team as they did in 2018.
So the interesting thing is, I know that Scout, when he initially came over from Korea, where he just was famous, like if your only fame is you were fake as backup, it's like you didn't actually do anything yourself. You just sat behind a guy and who never let you play because he was just too good. Like initially, people are going to think, like I actually thought this. I remember thinking like SKT are geniuses. If you just keep publicizing who the stand-in is, people keep buying them, thinking it's the next good mid laner. Meanwhile, like it was just a sub, like it's like you've got like a little, you got a great way to sort of sell off goods at like a higher price there. But fair play, Scout actually really changed my mind when I saw him in the LPL. And particularly, I noticed a lot of people were down on him coming into Worlds. He had one of the best Worlds of anyone in this team. So what should we actually expect from him? Like, where do you think he fits into the picture of mid laners in LPL? Because you notice I always stress this nowadays. Yeah. If we go back years enough, there weren't like a lot of big name talents in the mid lane because it was mainly an AD carry league. There are a lot of good mid laners. We've named at least like 5 in this episode. So where does Scout fit in that picture?
You're right. Here's the thing. Even the worst teams need to have good mid laners. You get to a point where like OMG, who I've been clowning on, have icons. So like the fact that they even have a star talented mid laner doesn't mean much anymore. But yeah, I think Scout, I think he's top 4 because you have to say rookie, then Knight. I'm just going to put in. And then at that point, it's either, I would put Scout around there. Actually, like just because of how consistent he is. It's a tough one. I'm just going to literally glaze my eyes through just to see if there's any mid laners that would challenge him. Like even Yagao is behind Scout. So yeah, I would say he's number 3.
Because for people who don't know, I think another reason why people in the past weren't as impressed by him as a player is he is a player like the Xiaohu example we gave before, where he can be put onto those, like he can just play Azir and sit in the mid lane. He can play a Ryze or Galio, these champions that aren't going to necessarily be like flashiest. But as we saw at Worlds and at some of the other, actually the guy could carry as well. If you give him a legit champ, if you give him an assassin, he can go off. Yeah,
initially he came in as a great Zed player. Like that's a Scout. So I think Scout literally can do whatever. At this time around, he's going to be put with he's going to give him way more responsibilities, I think, because even though iBoy is a world-class AD, Scout essentially just gives them an early game. Because if they do the Uzi thing, and they do the RNG thing of trying to loop around and play through bottom lane, it just doesn't work as much anymore. think iBoy still needs to be a lot more disciplined in how he uses his leads, and that's been an issue. While Scout's just been super consistent. So like you almost never have a wrong answer of trying to play through Scout.
Is it implied within China that this year will again be a year where, I mean, the joke I always had was that the jungler in this team is called Harrow, and then you have Clearlove who's just sat there, and it looks just like Haru and Ambition on Samsung, where they had this guy who clearly wanted to be the jungler, but they were like, is he ready though? And then since you've got this legendary jungler, and especially one who sets the whole team up, it's like, well, just tell him, like, you know, don't retire yet, you know, wait a while, like give us a chance to bring this guy forwards, and that way, you know, we'll use you when we need to, or you can be the insurance policy if he tilts in a game or something. Like, is the implication that that is the status of Clearlove at the moment? Like he's sort of like playing his last years. Will we actually see him potentially be the starter again? What do you think on this team?
This is the first year where that's the implication, because last year Haro, he was a rookie, but he didn't come in like for him, he had some pretty poor games early on. And I think after his later season of performance, his playoff slash specifically his gauntlet performance like put him on the map. And then his Worlds performance was like, all right, he's a legitimate like carry threat. So I think coming into this year, it's going to start with Haro. And even though EDG as a team has said that Clearlove is going to play through like some games in spring, suddenly that's the expectation that now you have to say to your audience that, yeah, Clearlove is going to play some games because like Haro is now expected to play them all.
Right. Obviously, I feel like the guy who always gets lost in the mix in EDG, because they're no longer a top team. And so unfortunately, when you've had your status and part of it was you were in the best team, when the team drops down, people often do that thing where if they don't watch the game, they go, oh, they describe it like the player is the team, and they're like, oh, he's having like an off season, you know, he's not doing very well at the moment. Yeah. And so the guy who everyone misses is, because in EDG, they've been kind of a lot of flash, but not that much substance at times. You only notice them when iBoy or Scout have an amazing game, so they get all the plaudits. Whereas if you look at the lineup, the actual player in the active lineup, who's obviously in theory the most decorated, is Mako, the support player. Yeah. But the problem he has is iBoy is obviously a very different AD carry to Deft. So who was Mako in this particular edition of EDG?
My God, he's literally like the dad amongst kids. I think that's his issue right now. He's trying to deal with so many young players and so many just like players that try and get the easy way out. I think it's the like basically the way to. Just the best way to put it. Yeah.
So he's like the dad who's like, you see the dad at like the park, you know, where on the one hand he's got like a dog on a lead that he's like hoping doesn't take a shit that he has to clean up, and then at the same time he's like, Sally, get off the slides now. Timmy, I told you not to go on the swing yet. Like I'm not ready. Yeah. Like while he's just talking to someone at the same time, you know, on the phone, like, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll be there 2:30 with the papers. Like, you're one of those guys who's just at the end of it. You know, he's like, he's clearly very capable, but you can take advantage of that as well. You can push a guy too far.
Yeah, like he can go crazy. It's
single
so
dad.
Just the man's gonna go insane at this point. Like the funniest thing is that like there were so many players that left EDG that you're like, okay, now this is a new like for instance when Mouse left EDG, you're like, okay, they can get a talented top laner, but at least with Mouse, you can keep him on an island, maybe check up on him and be like, okay, he's behind, but like he's gonna be good in team fights. Like Mouse was a great team fighter and could like lose gracefully. Now Ray, when he loses, is not graceful at all. So like you basically have to have your eye on the lane way more often, and you have to check like, sure, he wants to play carry, so like because Ray is a great carry player, but if your team is not set to play through top lane, then you got to break it to the man that he can't do it. Like it's not possible. And later on in the split, they just put him on tanks far more frequently and basically ran the one play style that worked for them. Yeah. And even iBoy has made the point in interviews like, I get told like when to go in when I'm the Kaisa. So it's like when people ask us like, oh, what went through your mind when you made that decision to just like press R and go in? It's like, oh, Mako basically told me to like when to do it, because otherwise like things go wrong, and they have gone wrong during the regular season. So I feel bad for Mako, man. Whenever there's questions levied over him, he's turned into like the czar of the team essentially.
Because, yeah, in line with what you're saying there, that was clearly the biggest criticism you could have for EDG, was that as a team, like if you get to a world-class international level and you could potentially beat top teams, you would hope that one thing you're definitely going to have as a foundational quality is like you're going to have really solid macro. And sadly, that is where EDG, at least at Worlds, looked terrible. Like they had some fucking amazing first 15, 20 minutes. They were doing some crazy shit that like got them leads on teams they had no business having a lead on. But then you go and you look at once it's like I say, almost the games hit at a certain time, it felt like it's not even that they were bad, they just didn't know what to do almost.
Because discipline and reliability just it's not there anymore. Because EDG used to be the team to not only get the best players, but also the most disciplined players. When they had Def's not going to lose you randomly. Like at that time, Def is not going to run up and like just die alone. That's just not his identity. And then if you look towards the jungle, when Clearlove was the best, Clearlove was actually risk averse at the time. He's not going to make mistakes that cost you the game. That's not who they were. So now the new problem is literally, yeah, you have great players. They're not the best players. IG has the best players. So like you don't have ownership over that identity anymore. But you also don't have ownership of like being the most disciplined team because you have iBoy, Haro, and Ray who made so many risks when it was not necessary. Even Scout had that identity like 2 years ago. Now he's not, and thank the Lord, because I don't think Mako can handle every player on his team just doing some monkey stuff like that. So that's just good for him now.
Sure. Right. What you alluded to it before. This team's shaking out around like what, 5th? That's kind of where you're seeing them.
Yeah.
And what's the overall reason? Like what stops them being a higher up team? I guess you alluded to that before, but what keeps them this high though?
I think what keeps them that high is the fact that they still do have some world-class talent. I think that iBoy and Scout are already like just basically top 4 in their roles. Like that in and of itself, you can always rely on having that massive impact in team fights. I also think that they always have the best coaching staff, like deep coaching staff. They had Nofe last time around. This time, Coach Hart is once again coming in from RNG. So if we're just talking about will they lose their spot to like, if they lose their spot to like FPX, I don't think it's going to happen. Billy, no. Just going through all of these teams, none of these teams have gotten a big enough push for them to essentially overtake EDG because they are just that strong and they are a machine. They can make mistakes, and a lot of times that's what we put in the focal point. But they still have a great organization.
Okay, so on like for example, when we talk about that team, that's also one of the things that I found very interesting was I've noticed that when coaches come over from Korea, like the initial assumption everyone has, because it's just been a typical problem in League of Legends that like, I know a lot of coaches in the West always complain, like people don't even know what a coach does. Like they're giving us way too much credit. Like, they're flaming me because my team lost in this way. But, they don't know that, like, I couldn't pick that champion for the top lane because he doesn't play that, or he doesn't like that matchup. Or if he plays that matchup, we lose the bot lane. Like there's all these factors that coaches always say, like, people make out like I'm telling them to do everything here. Whereas instead it's more like, I'm guiding them in a direction. I'm asking them to do things. It's a lot more of like a indirect approach, right? So one of the reasons why I actually found EDG a little bit troubling myself last year is I've always had a very high opinion of Nofe. I feel like he's a guy with a very good mind for the game. And when I saw how they ended up playing, like you were saying, some of the changes they had to make with how they swapped up how Scout and Ray played the game, what they ended up with at the end of Worlds, that made it look to me, combined with him leaving the team, like he came in and I'm sure he had lots of great ideas, but he just either couldn't implement them, or this was kind of like the best compromise he came up with. Is like, right, this is the best I can do. At least we've got some competence here, because clearly he couldn't like create some amazing structure. And so that certainly Hart's got his work cut out for him in that sense. Because again, you've got good players, but the part of the problem is, I guess the way to say it is there's not many people, like if you're building a team, okay, I'll give you a great analogy. In Counter-Strike, where we don't have any subs, so when you make a 5-man lineup, those 5 players are going to play every game. And so as a result, the way that you play the game, it's going to quickly emerge like what your system is in the game. And one of the things I always stress in Counter-Strike is, right, yeah, you're going to look to like people with great aim who are going to get all the kills because you want your star players. But actually star players can be useless without what I don't mean support like in the role. I mean like supportive elements. It's like you need a foundation from which the star player then can kind of like be elevated, and that's where his performance does win you the game. Part of the problem with EDG is they don't have a lot of that. It's like they've got the pop-off players, but where are the players that are going to give us this style that's going to work day in and day out, that's going to take us against the top teams and win? That it feels like that's missing. So I feel like I guess the positive way to spin it is if Hart can do something with that and make them better, he's going to get a lot of credit himself.
Yeah, I think it might happen where Hart, like if they start winning right now, already they took a series versus SDG. It doesn't mean too much because SDG is just learning as well. But I think Hart's going to get a lot of praise. Already these players were being pushed in the right direction. And you already hit the nail on the head in terms of like what coaches get credit for. Because a lot of the times, like when I looked at EDG's games, I don't criticize the draft and I don't criticize necessarily what the game plan was. Because you can see what the game plan is for this team. But the issue always is when they lose goal leads are just like basically player brain farts or like flubs where they're like, you had the right set pieces. It was in Worlds where you got to see them going up against like the Latin American North team. When they went up against the Latin American North team and then lost because once again they got picked off by the Reconnault in mid lane, you're like, wow, how furious is Nofe? Like this happened again. Like when is this going to stop? Where basically the players are disciplined for the full 40 minutes. And I think that's the major issue with the squad and why Hart might actually be in a better position with how that's been being drilled in consistently. And I think Hart does come in with at least bringing in the perspective he had in RNG, where RNG were flexible, but when it came to bigger games, can focus on a specific playstyle through AD carry. I think that's something that he can help with the team where a lot of times they are scattered through, yeah, we have so many good players and we can play through Ray or we can play through Scout, and they can actually just, hey, settle down and just play that one style consistently so they can get it right.
Right. We're not going to do every team, so you've noticed that purposely left a couple of them that there's not really any reason to talk about yet. We'll get into it when they get into matchups and if they have any results. You know, the one last team I thought we should reference, though, mainly for historical value, is OMG. Oh my god! So the question on this team is this: if you actually look at the team, what's going to surprise all our Westerners is there's name value in this team that you're going to know. You're going to know Shi Young. Admittedly, obviously he's been a top player in the last few years, but you might have known him when he used to be over on what team was he on again?
Who's Young?
Oh, he was always on OMG. What I'm talking about, he just used to be the mid laner. Yeah, I was.
Yeah, he used to be mid lane, then went support. So it seemed like he was on different teams because he was like stayed on the team for so long. There's new faces coming through.
And then elsewhere, as you said, they've got Icon, who was the guy who had the tough task of replacing Cool, which fair enough. He's a babe. He's got the whole marketing angle. As an actual player, you can enlighten us on that, but it's been up and down. And then the other player that people might know is another import from the LMS, which is Mountain, who famously used to play for AHQ, if you remember, back when they were actually in their prime. And obviously, you know, they've made Worlds playoffs before. So in terms of like talent, there are some names here. Why is OMG not more of a factor?
It's because I think a lot of it is just based off of how they should play the game. Because they are so set in stone, like they have to play through Icon. And Icon is basically he's going to play the same style no matter what meta comes in. If it's a slower meta, he's still playing early game, like he's still playing his picks. And a lot of times, usually that's okay, as long as you can play it correctly. But then there's no strategy involved with it. Sometimes they just like ham fist, like really forced plays with all of their junglers, because it wasn't just Mountain for a lot of times. Like they had a revolving door of like Fire Lolly, Mountain later on, and then like Giaco. So they just kept throwing new junglers because none of them worked, and Icon just essentially just wanted the best pairing. So it just felt like another like movie, another like sequel of Cinderella. This team needs to find consistency, and they need to find a second star, I think, because since losing SMLZ, they were just really pigeonholed in playing through Icon. And I think that's their major issue. Right now, they have like a pseudo 10-man roster, which might be really good for them because one player that a lot of teams tried to pick up and didn't get the opportunity, like OMG really snatched it away from them, was Ale, the top laner sitting behind Xiang. So Xiang is known for being consistent, like tank supportive player. Ale is like a carry top laner, young gun. I think Ale will play a lot of games actually. Like maybe not at the beginning because they want to at least give Xiang an early push and maybe have Ale sit behind him and watch. But like, at least that's some faith, is that you will have a top lane carry for OMG later on. But they're going to be sitting in the bottom, man. I don't see it. Like, I don't see it other than that.
Well, the other thing is as well, Raz, if you look at the schedule, my lord, they have a rough start. Their first game is OMG today, well, tomorrow, technically. And then after that, they play Billy Gaming, and then they play, who was the other one?
Oh, I mean the
Those
IG
are their
first. Yeah.
Yes, oh, sorry, IG, yeah. So their first 3 games are people where, at very least, competent, if not championship favourites for the league.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Any of these teams you think that they either have like a stylistic matchup chance against, or that they can maybe pull the upset, or should we expect a 0-3 start?
I think they pull upset versus Victory 5, because Victory 5 hasn't, like, they don't have a clear identity where they should play. They have Corn, who played really well on TOP last time around, but like, at least OMG knows themselves a little bit more and have been together for a while. So if they don't take that series, then they're going in 0-4. And that's actually pretty damning for this team, because like, they're a really emotional squad. And their opening day, I was there in Chengdu when they had their grand opening for their Chengdu stadium. And when they lost their first series versus Suning, Icon, he lives and dies by those games. So like, it really hurt him. You know, he was really emotional, was crying afterwards. Like, he's a player that, even if it's like one of those meaningless games, or even if he's like the underdog and they're not necessarily expected to win, he wants to come in and win every single game. And the fact that he's been losing that consistently, I think them starting 0-4 early in the split puts them in a series where they're just going to like consistently lose, even if it's against teams that they should beat against.
Right, in terms of when this episode should come out, I think that it should come out before Friday, Saturday, and Sunday play. So if you could look at the schedule there for me, and here's what I want you to do.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I picked out of those ones, like I said, Sonic versus RNG is like the marquee game. You know, it's the big names of the teams that they want to play. So first of all, on that one, I asked you earlier on, like, you have Sonic winning that one in theory, like if they're the team you expect them to be, right? Another game I want to ask about is... actually, how about this? Since the other games are more of a mixed bag, like it's good team versus bad team, or it's bottom team versus mid team. How about this? Pick a game and tell me like a player, either a famous player or a less well-known player, who would be like an interesting player to watch in one of these games. So if someone wants to watch, here's a reason to watch it. Like, do you like Gary Toplin as well? This guy's playing this matchup against this team, might go off. Like, give us a couple of names like that might tease people.
I'll say week 2 and Tuesday, that's Snake versus SDG. Now, SDG started the split really poorly, but they'll at least have another series where they can play through WE. But then SDG is versus Snake is literally Flandre versus Chang Hong. And I think that Chang Hong is like, he should get Rookie of the Year. I think he is that good as a player, as a team fighter. And he showed in Demacia Cup as a laner as well. So seeing Flandre versus Chang Hong is going to be really slick to see like those two go up against each other. And also just because I think Flandre should come back as one of the best top laners in the league. So that's a good one. I'll also say FPX and JD, just because once again, Doinby, if he goes up against his older teams, he's always going to put that one as like a major priority. That's when he actually just styles and like jumps up and dances if he can take the win. And if he loses, then he'll just like, you will see a really like depressed look on his face. So FPX versus JD, he'll put that on his calendar. Those are the two series that I really love immediately.